Hello everyone, if you're new to my channel, consider liking and subscribing. It will make me feel wonderful if you do that. Thanks. By the way, I also have another Naruto and Luffy fanfiction channel. If you are interested, link is in the description. Deadly Drinking Pirate by Darren. Ace was wondering about that sake he stole from those pirates before allowing his little brother Luffy drink it when they became brothers. And now Luffy has gained a new ability, one that defies the laws of devil fruits and yet makes him even stronger than before. Watch this drunk-proof pirate become the king of them all. Mature Luffy duel. Devil fruit. Luffy/Harim, I don't own anything, adios.
Suit back up guys, because if you like the fourth floor, you will love the fifth. Luffy spoke up while hastily getting his shirt and coat back on, same as Nami and Perona. At least no one else will see them in their bras. Bon Clay was delayed for a bit while swiping the staffer's coat to wear over his prisoner garb. Snug and nice and tight to Nola, we are finally in real hell. Luffy whispered to the size-changing snake that getting even more tense as the cold is especially dangerous to reptiles like her. Finally, they reached a massive door at the end of the hallway. Luffy grasped the handle and took a deep breath before swinging it wide open. A powerful gust of freezing air hit like a train to the face. They only needed a quick look to see this whole floor as the world's biggest freezer with jail cells stuffed with prisoners. If you could listen in, they often complained that the food was frozen and can't be eaten while guessing which finger is to fall off next. His companions knew they were smart in putting back on their layers. They can already feel the frost on their bare hands showing. Here it is, this is as far as those corridors can take us. Luffy wasn't doing any better but tried to focus on what to do here on the frozen floor. I have heard that some prisoners just disappear rather than freezing all over. We need to track down where they're vanishing because we still haven't reached Ace's prison level. Right, behind you, Luffy. Nami tried to salvage what little heat to spare by buttling around the captain's coat. Same with Perona and Bon Clay. However, a worse fate than freezing over had found them. So, you are Mugiwara Luffy, the Liber Glade. A voice broke throughout the floor and every prisoner started shivering. For once it was not the terrible cold. I am impressed that you got past our security and amazed that a pirate actually came on his own accord to the prison from hell. But it all ends here, for you making a mockery of the government that keeps this world safe. If I had a berry for every time someone said that, I will be swimming in millions, Magellan. Luffy was as confident as always, which comforted his companions a tad. Since your office was on this level, I had to hasten to this giant-ass freezer. Was the tour not to your liking? You only get to see Hancock come along once every blue moon, you know? Magellan was not amused at all. You should have stayed a Shichibuki if you wanted to live, like Habiheim. So, brace for your painful death. Mugiwara. Luffy grinned at the sight of the serpent heads made out of poison while pulling out his Reimeitami, Don Pain. Same to you, on the second level of Impel Down. Did you hear? Apparently, some no-good pirate actually came on his own accord. Why are pirates coming to jail? Should they be doing the opposite? A couple of guards were just simply walking along the cells filled with prisoners who were a bit too quiet. And with reports that they are gathering all the nearby and available marines to headquarters and the Shichibuki if they agree, I fear that war is coming. The second guard brought up, not really caring that the prisoners were not acting rowdy like they usually do or even whimpering in fear from the beasts of the second level. If it is a war, then the marines are going to win. I am sure of it, the first guard shouted out loud, not bothered that there were eyes being rolled at that. Unfortunately for those two, they weren't paying enough attention to notice something else out of the blue. One section of the foundation holding up the cells has a couple of brick-shaped gaps while the rest of it appears to be protruding outward for some reason. That's because the holes were spy holes, being used by Mr. 3. Looks like whatever is going down below us is getting most of the guards occupied. He whispered not just to himself but also to his companion hiding out in their makeshift shelter, cleverly crafted to blend in with the surrounding brick walls. Who is none other than Buggy. Can't believe I am saying this, but that Mugiwara, Straw Hat Fool has finally given us the big break of our lives. Mr. 3 was so relieved that he was brought to tears. I know, my friend. We had to sneak around and wait for hours before we got here to the second level. It is here that we make it big. Buggy rejoiced in his brief moment of triumph. Taking a turn through the spy holes, his grin got bigger. The coast was clear. All there is to do was sneak to one of the many cells of prisoners. Time is of the essence and we shouldn't miss this chance, men. Are you ready? The prisoners had grins on their faces too. We sure are, Captain Buggy. One spoke up while holding a keychain loaded with identical keys, while his fellow cellmates each have one too. These keys that Mr. 3 made will get our asses out of here. The floor was soon filled with devious chuckling, kept to a low to not alert any possible guard still on duty. XXXXX. Meanwhile, in level 5, screaming was heard throughout the shivering winds that can cut through one's bones even when heavily clothed. The air had not only snow and wind but a revolting stench as well. The prisoners looked up from complaining about fingers falling off and bread being too frozen to eat to see whole cell blocks attacked by a monster made from venom. They all knew it was Magellan but couldn't help wonder why the warden was rampaging through level 5. He had never done it before. Their answer was a young man hopping from cell block to another to dodge the incoming venom monsters. Come on Magellan, I am getting a little bored of this, and while I don't care for prisoners, how are you going to report all this to your bosses? Luffy taunted with the same confident, roguish smirk on his lips. All the while, Magellan was already panting with frustration at this hard-to-hit target talking back to him. After all, weren't you the one who made a big deal to your equal about killing prisoners? Shut up. Magellan was usually calm and collected, albeit easily annoyed with insubordination, but now he is outraged. The reports about your ability to read minds aren't so far-fetched after all. Just leave that psycho out of this, he is just another monster we don't need, anywhere. Monster is a relevant term, warden. To the prisoners and even your own staff, you are the monster. Luffy retorted as cold as the wind cutting through his bones. And now, you're the monster killing prisoners for a change. Doesn't that make you the psycho? Not waiting for an answer, Luffy took out his blades and charged at Magellan who looked like he was about to burst a blood vessel. That was when an even fouler smell broke through the strong icy winds that caused the remaining prisoners to shout out loud about their noses burning in the stench. When they all looked out of their cell blocks, they started to scream even louder than before. It was like seeing the devil himself in full, burning, smelly, venomous rage. It was so bad that Luffy himself lost his cool and stopped in his tracks. Now that is a monster, was the last thing the pirate said before a massive arm made of the terribly smelly sludge moved at blinding speeds, finally hitting its mark. All was left of that cell block that Luffy was standing on had completely and utterly dissolved along with several blocks nearby. The prisoners trapped in their cells lost the will to scream after that, and the warden did not even give them a passing glance. Shit, now I will have to report this to my superiors. I will count myself lucky to even keep my job. Magellan muttered to himself as he struck down to his base size and absorbed all that nasty venom that left a rotting stench in the air still. Not that it ever bothered him, and the remaining prisoners were all too scared to say a word about it. All Magellan cared was the intruder was dead, or was he? XXXXX, is he gone yet? I think so. It was a close call. In the distance, by some pillars that blocked most of the freezing winds, a familiar trio of pirates were hiding. I knew that trouble was goalie, so I made sure to make a couple of Aruabata, Ale Avatar, in advance. Luffy smirked as he huddled with his two lovers. Brilliant as always, Captain. Perona didn't care about the cold for the time being. If only we can see the look on that venom jerk's face when he finds out. Nami secretly wished for the same but hid it under a small smile. Luffy returned one of his own. We will leave that to our imagination while we try to find a way go further down. With that said, Luffy confirmed that Magellan has left level 5 and that it was high time to keep moving. Stay together and keep huddling, you guys. We still got a long way to go. And into the blizzard further within level 5 they trekked. It was so cold that they only had the energy to keep on walking, which came at a bad timing when a pack of white wolves appeared from the thick, snowy winds. They looked hungry for fresh meat, and from the drool off their jaws, they had found the jackpot. Luffy and his friends knew that the cold has sapped most of their strength away but weren't going to just surrender after they made it this far. One of the wolves leapt with fangs showing but instead got a mean punch to the jaw. The others followed and were hit by kicks and punches that drove off most of them. But unfortunately for the pirates, they were already exhausted from the cold and the wolves were the ones with the advantage this time. When it looked like they were going to get eaten, someone kicked away the wolves furthest from their prey. Dozens were sent flying in all directions and landed with terrible bruises to their bodies. The remaining wolves decided to cut their losses and fled deep into the frozen prison level. At first it was hard for the pirates to tell who came to save them from the wolves because of the snow until the figure got close enough to see it. Luffy knew for sure that he hadn't met this strange-looking person before, and neither did his lovers. But not to the companion they picked up back on level 3. You are Inazuma. You work for Lord Ivankov. Bon Clay looked relieved in spite of the intense cold. Inazuma has clothes and hair that is orange on one side and white on the other. On top of Inazuma's forehead, there is a distinct lightning bolt-shaped scar that goes over Inazuma's right eye. Inazuma seems to be holding a glass of wine in his left hand, and sporting a particular pose. If you wish to find safety, then follow me. XXXXX. Later, this is so weird. Perona said, we are sure to be at least 2 more levels down by now. This tunnel is going on forever. It didn't help that she was the only one complaining when they were saved from the freezing hell of floor 5 and the even deadlier Magellan. Everyone else were grateful that they could discard the heavy coats that were starting to itch a little. Young lady, this is merely a level between levels, constructed a while back by a prisoner who ate a certain Akuma no Mi that allowed for excellent digging. For the staff of the Impel Down, this is just a superstition, while to the prisoners, it is a safe haven to escape the torture of the levels and the staff themselves. Inazuma explained to the ghost girl, who only grumbled while still clutching Luffy's arm. That was when the pirates saw a literal light at the end of the long tunnel. "We are here. Welcome to level 5.5. Compared to the cries and screams of pain back in the upper levels, this place was filled with cheer and cries of excitement. Once their eyes adjust back to the bright lights compared to the dark tunnel, what behold them was nothing they had expected in the prison from hell. It was more like a concert hall and bar. There were round tables, open countertops with servers, an open space for partygoers, and finally a huge stage where a show was taking place. In the center of the performance and surrounded by strange clothed actors, was a figure who looked like a man trying to be a woman. Just who is that? Nami felt a little overwhelmed by all this strangeness that even exceeds the grand line. Perona was also hiding behind her captain's arm with no more words for all this. That man, yes a man, is actually a powerful figure down here that can help us reach Ace. He is known as Impero Ivankov. Luffy spoke in a deadpan tone, proving that not he can best explain how he feels about this. Ivankov is a large man with an afro of indigo hair, and has long eyelashes. He also has a noticeably odd-shaped chin resembling an arrowhead. His afro is large enough to hold people inside it. He has a personal Jolly Roger tattooed just below his chest. He dresses in reddish-purple woman's leotard with a high collar and a deep V-neck that reaches down to his belly. He wears matching gloves and boots, as well as a pearl necklace. He wears a net cape on his back and matching net leggings. He also wears heavy, but tasteful makeup. Thank you. The star of the show finished his performance before starting to slow down and even getting onto one knee. So tired, I think that I am. Don't die, Impero Ivankov. The crowd started to act worried for their star before. Not dying. Ivankov got right up from his silly act of pretending to be dying, which actually got the audience to admit they almost fell for it. As for Luffy and his companions, they were not amused nor falling for the obvious act. Tough crowd I see, what can I do to flip those frowns upside down? By hearing this out, Ivankov, we need you to help us get to Ace further down still. That killed the mood alright, and everyone gasped at such a request. Now why would I do that? I was placed in this god-forsaken pit because I rebelled against the world government. Why would I leave and be a fugitive all over again? Ivankov asked in a similar goofy fashion to what he did on stage. Because I know that you are still with the revolutionaries. After all, my father runs it. That was like dropping a 10-ton safe on a wooden floor. Now everyone is shocked. Even Perona and Bon Clay were among the people who just heard this unbelievable news. Your father? It was rather amusing to see such a silly character to be so shocked that he backed away right into a stone wall so hard that he left a noticeable mark. Are you kidding me? Wish I could. Beside the fact that he is my father, I know next to nothing about him. I got it all from my grandpa Garp. Luffy shrugged it off. I am not asking much, but I need your help to finally reach the level where Ace is. We will work on getting out while you can stay if you want. Imperio Ivankov was silent, a far cry from how she loved all the attention from the other inhabitants. First, tell me, which blue are you from? The East. Luffy spoke immediately, not even questioning why he was asked that out of the blue. I knew it. Your father will always face in that direction, sometimes without realizing it. Ivankov responded. For every time I will ask why, he stubbornly refused to answer. Now I know, he had family in the East. But I still need to know, to be sure, are you really his son? Suddenly the entire space between levels was filled to the brim with something hard to see to the eye but weighted terribly on everyone's soul. Bon was also terrified while Perona gritted her teeth. The only ones not affected were Luffy and Nami, although the latter looked a little worried. How about now, Imperio? Now, Ivankov looked like she was about to kneel down for real before. I am sure, now is the time to return to the surface and back to Dragon. This successfully released the heavy presence and lifted everyone's spirits. My candies, my loyal and brave followers, be ready to fight for freedom when the terrible staff comes to stop us. XXXXX. It was a good call to rally as much help as possible, for how there was extra security than usual. Even the secret exits were no longer completely safe. Nevertheless, Luffy found a break in the rotations and soon reached the elevator that will take them to the true bottommost level of the prison. However, upon seeing the 6th floor to be not like the others, it was composed of several prison cells littered across the vast floor, along with a massive cell in the far back of the room made only for giants and the like to be contained in. All the pirate captain was interested in was Ace's cell. Too bad that his brother was nowhere to be seen. I had hoped we will make it in time. Luffy spoke with such a rare tone of defeat that made him lose strength in his legs to stand at the sight. While his girlfriends tried to comfort him, Ivankov spoke to Luffy. They must have gotten recent orders to move Ace to headquarters ahead of schedule. If we move now, we can still catch up and maybe steal one of their ships to tail to wherever they're taking him. I know where, long before I even asked Hancock to sneak us in. Luffy spoke, his soft tone still heard loud and clear. They're going to make a spectacle of him just like the Pirate King over 20 years ago. Only they hope to deliver their message for real this time. So instead of Log Town in the East Blue, they are going to the heart of the Navy Force. Marineford. Everyone shouted out, ignoring the complaints from the other prisoners about all the noise and or the sad scene that made them supposedly sick to the stomach. Ivankov made sure they shut up with a death wind for each one. Yeah, and it's going to be even more difficult to get in and out with your life. They will be bringing everyone, and I mean everyone they can, to get ready for Shirahige-sama, Whitebeard, to come. Because he will. Luffy added. That not just means hundreds of marines but dozens of vice admirals with all 3 of the monsters of the marine, not to mention the remaining Shichibuki, 7 warlords of the sea, that want a piece of Shirahige-sama. With a pause to let it all sink in, Luffy practically punched the cell bars of the cell, ignoring the weakening feeling of the sea stone, that makes up the bars. That was why I was hoping to get here earlier, so Ace can help us plow our way out of this prison from hell and eventually rejoin with our crew. Nobody, not even the prisoners in their own cells, had anything to say to that. That was the only plan I can come up with that would have worked. Now we can try to get everyone out, but I got nothing on how to sail away from Impel Down. Our ride here had to leave ages ago, so she won't blow our cover. As we speak, any and all ships could be far away from the prison docks to strand us here. I got nothing on how to fix that. His companions can see the desperation in the eyes that used to be full of boundless confidence and wished they had an answer. That was when. Wait, a small, tired voice that seemed to be awakened by the comminution was heard in the same cell. Are you, Luffy? Said pirate took a close look with squinted eyes, trying to pierce the darkness of the cell and then widened them with surprise. This was the first time he had seen this certain prisoner, but Luffy knew immediately who this was. You are. It was a good call to rally as much help as possible, for how there was extra security than usual. Even the secret exits were no longer completely safe. Nevertheless, Luffy found a break in the rotations and soon reached the elevator that will take them to the true bottommost level of the prison. However, Ace, Luffy shouted upon seeing the 6th floor to be not like the others. It was composed of several prison cells littered across the vast floor, along with a massive cell in the far back of the room made only for giants and the like to be contained in. All the pirate captain was interested in was Ace's cell. Too bad that his brother was nowhere to be seen. I had hoped we will make it in time. Luffy spoke with such a rare tone of defeat that made him lose strength in his legs to stand at the sight. While his girlfriends tried to comfort him, Ivankov spoke to Luffy. They must have gotten recent orders to move Ace to headquarters ahead of schedule. If we move now, we can still catch up and maybe steal one of their ships to tail to wherever they're taking him. I know where, long before I even asked Hancock to sneak us in. Luffy spoke, his soft tone still heard loud and clear. They're going to make a spectacle of him just like the Pirate King over 20 years ago. Only they hope to deliver their message for real this time. So instead of Log Town in the East Blue, they're going to the heart of the Navy Force. Marineford. Everyone shouted out, ignoring the complaints from the other prisoners about all the noise and or the sad scene that made them supposedly sick to the stomach. Ivankov made sure they shut up with a death wink for each one. Yeah, and it's going to be even more difficult to get in and out with your life. They will be bringing everyone, and I mean everyone they can, to get ready for Shirahige-sama, Whitebeard, to come. Because he will. Luffy added. That not just means hundreds of marines but dozens of vice admirals with all 3 of the monsters of the marine, not to mention the remaining Shichibuki, 7 warlords of the sea, that want a piece of Shirahige-sama. With a pause to let it all sink in, Luffy practically punched the cell bars of the cell, ignoring the weakening feeling of the sea stone, that makes up the bars. That was why I was hoping to get here earlier, so Ace can help us plow our way out of this prison from hell and eventually rejoin with our crew. Nobody, not even the prisoners in their own cells, had anything to say to that. That was the only plan I can come up with that would have worked. Now we can try to get everyone out, but I got nothing on how to sail away from Impel Down. Our ride here had to leave ages ago, so she won't blow our cover. As we speak, any and all ships could be far away from the prison docks to strand us here. I got nothing on how to fix that. His companions can see the desperation in the eyes that used to be full of boundless confidence and wished they had an answer. That was when. Wait, a small, tired voice that seemed to be awakened by the comminution was heard in the same cell. Are you, Luffy? Said pirate took a close look with squinted eyes, trying to pierce the darkness of the cell and then widened them with surprise. This was the first time he had seen this certain prisoner, but Luffy knew immediately who this was. You are, Jinbei? Luffy found his voice again and, on cue, a light from who knows where shone on the other half of the cell that escaped everyone's sight upon their arrival at the bottommost level. A large blue whale sharkfish man in a red coat. Jinbei? As in, Knight of the Sea, Jinbei? Ivankov spoke up. But last I heard he is still one of the Shichibuki. Why is he doing here, this time? Luffy did not answer. He simply gave a soft look that clearly asked the fishman himself to respond. Because I refused to answer the call of the Navy. It was a demand that I will not bring myself to even think of accepting. Shirahige-sama, Whitebeard, is still a beloved friend of Fishman and Merfolk after what he did to protect us from slave traders. Jinbei explained with his heart more broken than his flesh. How is he still conscious with bruises and blood scabs all over just proves he is above the average Grand Line pirate. That was why they locked me down here, so I won't interfere with the war they're preparing with Shirahige-sama. Now I just await to hear what is to happen to my home after the end of the war. No, Luffy spoke again, which nearly spooked everyone. You still have a lot of good you can do with your strong heart, strong soul and strong fists, Jinbei. I am not going to let you rot down here. With your powers, we might just have a chance to stop the war in its tracks. He turned to Ivankov with his accomplice Inazuma, ready to ask for the means to open the cell open when another voice was heard. And who are you to escape from this hell without my help? Mugiwara, Straw Hat, Luffy and Nami shivered when they heard that voice. It has been forever but they could never forget it. Everyone else were wondering who it was until they all turned to their left to a whole other cell. It was a bit dark and the figure was mostly a silhouette, but the massive hook on his left arm was hard to miss. And why would we do that? Crocodile? Nami scowled at the sight of the former Shichibuki from her favorite spot, behind her captain's back, while Perona only looked with disinterest. She knew who Crocodile was, from when she served under Moria. Her old boss loved to complain about the other Shichibuki a lot. But this was a new look for him. Purely a prison outfit that was tattered and filthy like the others, with only his signature large golden hook still attached. Why, Straw Hat? I could be of a big assistance if you insist on getting out of this hellhole alive. After all, ARRGH, Crocodile had his usual smug attitude until he was immediately slammed into the bars of his cell block, made entirely out of kairoseki. First of all, does this feel familiar to you? Luffy was in no mood for jokes or prisoners who think they can ask their hated enemies to let them out. Crocodile growled with his blood dripping down his face, as he does remember when the roles were reversed. Only in that time, Luffy somehow swapped places with a clone that dissolved his own cage made of kairoseki. He spotted Nami with the ghost of a smile from her hiding spot. She still feared Crocodile for his deadly power in spite of his new circumstances. Second, I am perfectly aware that you can get us out of here. But what is stopping you from making your own way out all on your own? Crocodile was still annoyed with both the talk down from Luffy and the blood still itching at his face, but he still cracked a grin. You are young and reckless, boy, but never was a fool. Of course, I have every intention on heading out on my own after leaving this prison. XXXXX later, Ivankov was making a speech to convince his fellow prisoner followers, or candies, as he puts it, to escape impelled down with him now that he has a good reason to be a fugitive from the world government again. It was until his second in command, Inazuma, that the stars of this breakout had already left. True to be told, Luffy had already got a head start of the escape with both Jinbei and Crocodile. The latter somehow had gotten his signature clothes from back in Alabastra, which included a fur coat to tie it all together. Heavens knows where it came from while inside a prison. As for Nami and Perona, they were both riding along with their captain and two other former prisoners of level 6 on board Nola the Snake. Thankfully, they were not going through the frozen hell of level 5 this time. There was just a large door at the top of the stairway and Crocodile rocked forward in an impressive show of his sand fruit. Doors mean nothing to me. My right hand holds the power of thirst itself. He never noticed that his companions rolled their eyes at him being dramatic. Nevertheless, the wood crumbled once Crocodile placed his palm on bad that there were prison guards on the other side. There they are, the escapees, aiming their rifles. Confident in their number, the guards started to fire on Crocodile. They must have either forgotten who Crocodile was or just assumed he was just a well-dressed escapee, because those bullets left only holes leaking sand, not blood. Fools! He has logia powers. Use the special bullets, too bad that they never got the chance. Barjan, Desert Cutlass, Crocodile surged forward with his sands forming a curved blade at the side of his right arm that cut right through those unfortunate guards. Instantly, they all shivered up and became lifeless husks with uniforms on. The true deadly power of the Suna Suna no Mi, sand fruit. And Crocodile has a lot more where that came from. Focus men, Crocodile is not alone. One guard from further into the corridor called out. Crocodile smirked at more cannon fodder to slaughter. May make all this worth it. It's Jinbei, of the Shichibuki. He has decided to rebel against us. Indeed, the massive fishman was in this fight too. And already he strikes forward with a punch and a stance. Only for nothing to happen. What was that supposed to be? One guard asked before he lost his voice. The rocks started to rocket off. One guard had his face stretched, another with his stomach caved in, yet another with his face carving inward, and a fourth one was shifting on the ground until they all were sent flying. Karakusagawara Saiken, arabesque tiled true punch. Now it was Luffy's turn. He wanted to conserve his energy for the real fight to escape up ahead. He only toyed with Magellan as a distraction with the help of his Aruabata, Ale Avatar, Gum Gum. Luffy compressed his right arm into itself for some loaded action. Supporn Gashato, spring shot. The guards screamed as the punch rocketed right through their numbers, the shockwave dividing the army and paving a path for the escapees. "We will help too, Luffy-kun," Crocodile gritted his teeth. Jinbei looked infatuation while Luffy chuckled as his girlfriends also contributed to thinning the crowd ahead. "Always wanted to try this one, Thor," Nami screamed, but the guards screamed louder as most were toasted and some vapored by a terrifying beam of pure lightning that made the previous 3 attacks lot like chump change. The 2 Shichibuki, one former and one considering resigning, were in both awe and shock at the magnitude, and from the captain's girlfriend and navigator of all people. Even Perona was still in shock while surrounded by a large handful of guards on the ground muttering negative things. And yet, a lot like the Hydra their warden was known for, more and more guards keep coming as the 2 powerful fighters continue to fight their way through the 4th floor with its boiling temperatures. It did help to release the prisoners burning alive in their cells, including one such prisoner, ironically speaking, named Mr. 1 aka Daz Bones. Crocodile himself was the one who went to his block and asked the man in person to join them. His soup no mi. Dice fruit. Aided in the fight against the guards. Woohoo, a new player entered the fray and resembled Ivankov very much except for the fact that this figure looks like a well-shaped woman. Before anyone asked, I just felt like being a woman right now. Mugiwara, Straw Hat. Apparently, this silly person ate an Akuma no mi. Devil fruit. That pushed the envelope by allowing full control over the user's hormones. Which include things like genders and moods. With only a few hundred more guards to plow through, nobody had the energy to ask. Only feel a little relieved that now they had an army of their own, dressed in the silliest of garbs and armor anyone has ever seen. They had just made it through level 4 and had reached level 3 when they encountered another blockade of guards, but more than that. That is as far as any of you wicked killers and vile scumbags go. It was the vice warden of Impelled Down, Hanayabao, standing strong with his unique weapon. It is best described as a naginata, a type of Japanese halberd, with a matching, second curved blade on the opposite end. I am here to see that you won't scare and terrorize any more civilians with your evil deeds. I won't let you escape and ruin the sanctuary of this place that is the only thing holding you murderers and thieves from the good people who have to live in fear of you. Prepare to. Hanayabao was interrupted when Luffy appeared before him in an instant before slamming his sandal on the blunt side of the blade, seeing it deep into the ground below, practically burying the weapon in the rock. If not for our circumstances, we would have been flattered that for a chance of pace, you worry about the consequences of our evil deeds. Too bad for you. The Marines you idolize couldn't care less what we do, only that we are pirates and criminals and thus wild animals to put down, for sport. Luffy spoke in one breath with a cold tone despite the intense temperatures of level 4. Just as Hanayabao was about to say something in protest, another voice cut the tension like a filthy knife. Look in the whole world and you will never find this weak take on the justice you obviously care too much about. The vice warden was no fool and yet was too slow to stop a boot from smashing his head into the ground when he turned to see who spoke up. The guards nearby screamed with terror as dark substances overwhelmed them. And amongst the anguish and screams were laughter as a certain small and familiar gang appeared safely behind the blackness attacking the guards. On the other side of the standoff, most of the witnesses to this scene from A Nightmare did not know what to think of this. Even Nami and Perona had no idea what was going on, but there was this nagging feeling of dread creeping up their spines. That only happens when something terrifying is about to happen that even their captain and lover is wary of. Perhaps a bonus from their bond. As for the captain in question, he glared like he had never did before. Once he first learned of this peculiar piece of scum and how he had the audacity to violate every scared code among the pirates even to that very day, he resolved to never greet this man with nothing less. Hello, Teach. All of his resentfulness and utter hatred was shown in those 2 words. Z ha 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 ha. What a colorful crowd you made for yourself. Mugiwara, falling up downwards. Marshal D. Teach, calling himself Blackbeard, showed his disgusting wide smile while taunting the escapees. Crocodile and Jinbei already knew enough about this pirate to know that he is more of an arrogant pest than a threat. Yet I am not going to even bother ask what you know about me or why I am here in this stinking hellhole. You probably read my mind already, I am not going to dignify that with a response, Teach. Just show it off, why don't you? Luffy was not in a laughing mood for sure. Teach still had the nerve to try and look dumb anyways. I mean your shadow, show us what you can do with it now. Show everyone what you did, to Moria. Teach's vile grin only grew to a greater size, what made everyone feel shivers up their spine, even with the present extreme temperatures. Then the realization came to Luffy's lovers like a ton of bricks. The after party at Thriller Bark that led to a shocking call to the Gorosei, 5 elders. Z ha 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 ha. Have your way, Mugiwara. With the light of the fires around them, everyone saw Teach's shadow start to shake and shift before slithering along the walls and the floor, terrifying the escapees from floor 5.5. Crocodile, Jinbei and Ivankov, on the other hand, were more shocked than scared because they recognized this power and realized the only way this newcomer can have it Martial Teach truly had slain Gecko Moria and somehow had obtained the Cage no Mi. Shadow fruit. Despite already having an Akuma no Mi. They just watched as the black image of Teach assumed a much larger and even more deformed state than the original. If there ever was a flat NO, then Luffy had delivered it. Moria was a disgrace, not even half the legend he made when he fought Kaido evenly before losing the battle and everything else in it. And yet, he was not shameless in the use of his power, just relied on it too much. You, on the other hand, can't even use your new power to its fullest here or anywhere for that matter. True to his bold if not fearless nature, Luffy had both mocked his former idol and placed Teach below that in terms of contempt at the same time. Besides, this is not even a showdown anymore. Guess who is coming to join? Luffy backed off a few feet not in fear and in preparation for something to happen. And what came next were more screams when the pathway behind Blackbeard was demolished and suddenly, the most revolting stench filled the burning air. The pirates named such were shocked and quickly backed off at the sight of a literal devil glaring through the darkness and shown a pair of hand made with some pink substance that rotted the air and melted the walls on either side of the pathway. A truly demonic voice made its way to the witnesses to its terrible glory. Cannot believe that I was summoned here like a mongrel minion, and by a pirate nonetheless. To the average pirate, this was an actual devil, but the escaped inmates including Crocodile and Jinbei know this. You summoned Magellan. Right to us. The former was actually considering the idea of killing Luffy for this. The rest were either too shocked or scared to say anything else. I don't like you any more than you like me, Crocodile. I needed something, or someone to deal with Teach and his gang who are in our way. Luffy responded before turning to Magellan like an old college buddy. Trust me. You will thank me for this one of these days. Right now, just deal with the other break-in while we will be on our way. I don't care that I have to destroy this entire level, none of you scumbags are getting past me. And if you could, I sent every guard and staff down here to put you all down. You can't through all of us, Mugiwara. Magellan growled out, truly pissed off with how his prison was hit with 2 break-ins in just one day in its long history. Luffy's permanent grin and calm demeanor did not help his growing anger. I agree. It was anyone's guess as what this pirate captain had in mind and behind that smug smile. Which was why I sent her, ahead of the game. Right on cue. The ceiling above level 4 shook something terrible before something broke right through. Everyone waited with bated breath before a familiar sight, to some, emerged. A massive serpent with the largest whiskers and a gaping jaw that roared at the witnesses below her. Both parties stared at the giant snake, somehow knowing that this monster did not come from level 2, which is composed of dangerous animals. Nami and Perona felt a feeling of deja vu while Luffy's smirk never left his face. Good timing, girl. Can you please? Luffy used his right thumb to point to the party of escapees behind him. Before any of them could even make a peep, Nola cobbled them all up in one massive gulp. She leaned her head back to swallow her new passengers, with several muffled voices of discomfort and fright moving past her mouth. She didn't mind, and even gave Luffy a tickle of her snake tongue. Said Captain turned to see the Blackbeard pirates and Magellan were still frozen in fright. You bastards, have you fun down here in this hellhole and take your time. We will be on our way out of here. Luffy spoke before Nola also swallowed him and ascended back through the floor she appeared from. Mugiwara. That finally snapped the Blackbeard pirates and Magellan out of their shock and could only cry out for their common enemy who had made fools of them once again. All they could do is face each other for a rematch. Too bad nobody was left awake to witness it. XXXXX elsewhere on level 2, Warden Magellan, come in. A guard shouted into his personal Den Mushi. Transponder snail. While a few more were watching the hallways and blocking the passageways. Where is he? We actually caught these prisoners and their so-called ringleaders in the act, but nobody is answering our calls. Sad but true. Buggy and his new partner though the coast were cleared to break out the level 2 prisoners and start a riot on their way out of prison. That was until hordes of guards were summoned from all levels down to where the warden demanded. That was how the facility had found out about the riot before it can even begin. With numbers and arms and spades, the prisoners were all apprehended in no time, much to Buggy and Mr. Three's disappointment. But not as much as the prisoners who really thought the clown and the guy with his hair making a 3 were getting them out. Before the guard could try the line again, the prison level shook terribly. The prisoners panicked, calling it either an earthquake or the warden on a rampage. What made them scream was the wall facing behind them bursting open to reveal some kind of a mouth which gobbled them all alive. It not only got to Buggy and Mr. Three's cell but all cells that housed prisoners, all screaming before disappearing into the mouth of the monster that came from the walls. The prison guards couldn't believe what they just saw and almost forgot about calling the warden for an update when the Den Mushi ran. The guard holding it answered and was greeted with a booming voice belonging to Magellan. Lock down the prison. Never before had any of those hapless prison guards moved so fast in their entire lives. Too bad that it was all for naught. At the front gate, alright. That was the last one. One guard let out a sigh of relief after confirming with the guards stationed at the lower levels that they had sealed every entrance and exit. With that fact in the back of his mind, said guard was about to move on to the second most pressing matter. The whereabouts of the rioters from level 2 and the escapees last seen on level 4. That was before he heard a low hissing sound, like a snake nearby. Alarmed, the guard took out his rifle and frantically searched for the source of the hissing. And he found it, coming from the walls. Nervously, the guard walked up to where the sound was emerging and pressed his ear against the stone when it gave away in an instant. The poor guard was flattened before he could even respond, or hear the metal gates launched by a mighty tail. Outside, several ships stationed to monitor the waters around impelled down, witnessed a giant snake emerge from the prison, roaring at the skies. Marines and sailors were alarmed and took up their weapons against the beast, who didn't even spare a passing glance. She only had eyes on one of the ships. The one sitting the furthest from the prison. Even if the witnesses noticed, they couldn't have warned that ship of the massive snake as the monster moved at incredible speeds towards her target. Hopping along the ships like stones on a pond. Not like a frog but like an actual snake would leap, then slither and leap again to the next ship. The poor sailors on that ship the snake targeted were scared stiff. They wondered how they can kill this monster before it eats them. The snake took one good look at the Marines and sailors on the ship she had finally landed on and opened her mouth nice and wide. The poor souls were expecting to swallow it whole until they heard voices. Screams, not of terror like an impelled down, but of rage and battle thirst. Sure enough, what came out were the prisoners that were swallowed alive by the massive snake. With the scary and shocking scene in this ambush, the Marines never stood a chance. They were mobbed, overwhelmed, thrown overboard and/or brutalized in ways too many and too grisly to describe. While all that was happening, the last of the people inside the giant snake came out. A young but infamous pirate captain, his two lovers, a hardened fishman and a crossdresser with an oversized head. Once they landed on the ship's deck, the snake started to shrink into the size of a Garden SN pirate captain's leg all the way to his neck. "Thank you, Nola, you did a lot today. Rest up," Luffy said as Nola got comfy in the collar of his captain's cardigan. Nami and Perona couldn't help but coo a little at the sight of the little serpent that got them all out of hell. "I must admit, Mugiwara," Buggy forced himself to say, even though he got some stress out of his system after beating some of the Marines. "You always have been hard to predict. At least being swallowed by your pet snake sure beats being in a jail cell all over again." He ignored several passing glares from the prisoners including Mr. 3. "But now what do we do?" That got the attention of most of the escapees. The likes of Crocodile and Mr. 1 just huffed into their own direction. "Yes, Straw Boy. Where are we going now?" Ivankov chimed in with Luffy's new nickname. Jinbei was silent out of respect for his savior, who clearly has his answer with a look of pure determination and grim anticipation in his eyes. Everyone else waited with bated breath before Luffy finally answered. "To war, friends. To the war that will change the world, for better or for worse," Luffy said while causally and slowly walking to the side of the stolen ship. Only a handful of the escapees knew what was in the direction of Luffy's gaze. "Ready yourselves, everybody. We set sail for Marineford." "Z ha 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 ha. What a colorful crowd you made for yourself, Mugiwara," falling up downwards. Marshal D. Teach showed his disgusting wide smile while taunting the escapees. Crocodile and Jinbei already knew enough about this pirate to know that he is more of an arrogant pest than a threat. "Yet I am not going to even bother ask what you know about me or why I am here in this stinking hellhole. You probably read my mind already, I am not going to dignify that with a response, Teach. Just show it off, why don't you?" Luffy was not in a laughing mood for sure. "Z ha 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 ha. Have your way, Mugiwara." They just watched as the black image of Teach assumed a much larger and even more deformed state than the original. And what came next were more screams when the pathway behind Blackbeard was demolished, and suddenly, the most revolting stench filled the burning air. The pirates named such were shocked and quickly backed off at the sight of a literal devil glaring through the darkness and shown a pair of hand made with some pink substance that rotted the air and melted the walls on either side of the pathway. A truly demonic voice made its way to the witnesses to its terrible glory. "Cannot believe that I was summoned here like a mongrel minion, and by a pirate nonetheless." To the average pirate, this was an actual devil, but the escaped inmates including Crocodile and Jinbei know this. "You summoned Magellan, right to us?" The former was actually considering the idea of killing Luffy for this. The rest were either too shocked or scared to say anything else. "I don't care that I have to destroy this entire level. None of you scumbags are getting past me. And if you could, I sent every guard and staff down here to put you all down. You can't throw all of us, Mugiwara," Magellan growled out, truly pissed off with how his prison was hit with 2 break-ins in just one day in its long history. Luffy's permanent grin and calm demeanor did not help his growing anger. "I agree. It was anyone's guess as what this pirate captain had in mind and behind that smug smile. Which was why I sent her, ahead of the game. Right on cue, the ceiling above level 4 shook something terrible before something broke right through. Everyone waited with bated breath before a familiar sight, to some, emerged. "You bastards, have you fun down here in this hellhole and take your time. We will be on our way out of here." Luffy spoke before Nola also swallowed him and ascended back through the floor she appeared from. Mugiwara. That finally snapped the Blackbeard pirates and Magellan out of their shock and could only cry out for their common enemy who had made fools of them once again. All they could do is face each other for a rematch. Too bad nobody was left awake to witness it. XXXXX. I must admit, Mugiwara, Buggy forced himself to say, even though he got some stress out of his system after beating some of the Marines. You always have been hard to predict. At least being swallowed by your pet snake sure beats being in a jail cell all over again. He ignored several passing glares from the prisoners including Mr. 3. But now what do we do? That got the attention of most of the escapees. The likes of Crocodile and Mr. 1 just huffed into their own direction. Yes, Straw Boy. Where are we going now? Ivankov chimed in with Luffy's new nickname. Jinbei was silent out of respect for his savior who clearly has his answer with a look of pure determination and grim anticipation in his eyes. Everyone else waited with bated breath before Luffy finally answered. To war, friends. To the war that will change the world, for better or for worse. Luffy said while causally and slowly walking to the side of the stolen ship. Only a handful of the escapees knew what was in the direction of Luffy's gaze. Ready yourselves, everybody. We set sail for Marineford. Pass me a snail. A tall, stoic man with a seagull on his hat spoke from up high on a platform. Sir. A man in a guard's uniform approached with a Den Den Mushi, transponder snail, to present to his superior. Said man took the little creature without much fuss and brought it in front of his lips and got ready to speak, to whoever will be listening. This is Fleet Admiral Sengoku and he looks below to see just about every marine sailor and soldier, every captain to every vice admiral, present and waiting. Between them and Sengoku were several giants wearing marine uniforms and armed for battle. As well as the Shichibuki, 7 warlords of the sea, who simply want to get this affair over with. All of them were placed in the shadow of Marineford, the headquarters of the entire marine force. And they are all here for the battle of a lifetime. On this day, one certain pirate, named Hyken, Firefist, Ace, will be executed in such grandiose fashion. Not for his own crimes or notoriety of being his own pirate before and after he joined the Whitebeard pirates as a commander under the captain himself. The latter is the reason the Marines have gathered all of their forces, including their government-protected pirates, because Whitebeard never lets anyone harm one of his own without coming for payback. They all know he is coming, the strongest man in the world coming for a battle for just one of his sons. But first, Sengoku speaks into the snail's receiver. I have some information I would like to share with all of you. No one said a word, the suspense was already affecting their nerves as it is. This man impending death is more profound than you may realize. Sengoku looked down on their captain, their prisoner, the criminal they had arranged everyone to witness his execution. He had been strangely cooperative, not even trying to flee or fight the whole trip, completely silent. Portgas Diaz, who is your father? Such a simple question nearly threw everyone in for a loop, including the reporters from islands like Sabaody. And yet, Ace was more spooked than confused before regaining his composure. Whitebeard. He is my father. With such sureness in that tone, one can truly believe it. But Sengoku was not even amused. There is no use lying. Tell everyone who your real father is. Nobody could figure out why the head of the Marines who were wasting time on a question that everyone thought they had already answered. I just told you, it's Whitebeard, Ace shouted at the man called Buddha, annoyed that he has asked the same question. Whitebeard is my father, my only father. Anyone could see this was going nowhere. Sengoku sighed, he really wanted to do it simple for once but that wasn't going to happen. We had received intel, that a small chance of your father meeting a certain woman in the South Blue. A woman who, against all odds, fell in love with such an evil scoundrel that is your father. An even smaller chance, one we couldn't afford to ignore, that this union came to a child being born. Sengoku spoke as if giving a report during a meeting of sorts. We searched the entirety of the South Blue and all the other blue seas for this woman, for any babies born around that time. But all our searches came up empty. Ace was silent once again, trying to glare at Sengoku but couldn't raise his head. His chains are made of the special sea stone, sea prism stone, that was draining of his powers and strength. In spite of our efforts, you were born into our world, Ace. But not without consequence that your mother had to suffer. In order to protect you from us, she had kept her baby in her womb for a total of 22 months. Sengoku announced that got Ace even more rattled and the crowds were astonished. Can a mere woman do such a thing? Especially for a life that was still awaiting to begin. You know very well, Portgas Ace. Your father is Gold Roger, king of the pirates. XXXXX around the same time, boy, you better have a plan. Crocodile was itching in place, being surrounded by his fellow escapes that were hiding their wet pants or trying to contain their excitement. Not even this government ship will be allowed the gates of justice because of thring for Whitebeard. The former Shichibuki spoke that name with clear venom, not that anybody noticed or even cared. I am aware, crocodile. Luffy responded with similar tones while not even looking at the former scarred face. I also hope you realize that since we made our grand departure, we haven't seen any ships of any kind even just to pass by. How ironic that a war has allowed us to not be pursed. We can safely just stay where we are until the waters start to shake. That will be our cue to join the fun. Crocodile wanted to argue more, but he knew what Luffy was talking about, and said nothing. All he wanted to be where he didn't have to look at the rookie that ruined his plans and now the one that owns his freedom. The very thought makes him sick to his stomach. That and where he didn't have to listen to the literal clown of a pirate dramatically speaking to the level 2 prisoners of all the glory that awaits them in this war, mostly for himself. Now, Buggy, Luffy spoke to the glory hog with a big red nose. Now is good time as any to tell your new fans. Now would you like me to tell them or do you want to? That got most of their attention. Said pirate with makeup stopped in his tracks and then just deflated. Just do what you want, Mugiwara. We followed you out the hell that is jail and right into the hell that is war anyways. Won't make any difference to how much the world wants me dead especially. The giant pirate clown who loved the attention and talked big, merely whimpered and withered on the ship's deck. He didn't even care about the prisoners asking what is wrong with him. Fine, whatever Buggy. Luffy was not impressed nor amused but took the answer anyways. I just want you to know that I have spoken with the Dark King on Sabaody. He has a few words to share with you. Buggy got back up on his feet, once more ignoring his shocked fans around him. You met really? I thought all this time that he had settled down. Is he still pirating? This got the crowd wondering how their new boss and their savior knew such a legend that is almost unbeatable even in old age. He is fine. Still married. Still making money by selling himself as a slave and robbing his new owner. Old man got to have some fun, right? Luffy answered Buggy's question, which made the clown chuckle, muttering that it sounds like really alright. Turning to the rest of the escapees, Luffy spoke a level louder for all to hear. I already informed my crew upon arriving at a sea made of clouds, and now I tell you all if you don't already know. Everyone was taking in the suspense and waited on the edge of their seats, metaphorically, for the answer. Buggy was an apprentice pirate in his youth, under the wings of none other than Gold Roger, king of the pirates. The majority of the escapees were shocked and silent. Crocodile, Jinbei, Mr. One and a few others couldn't hide their own surprise but couldn't find the words to use. That is until the peanut gallery finally responded with a thunderous WHATTT, XXXXX. The world was still and silent. They couldn't believe their ears. Then again, it finally explained why the Marines were even more determined and more willing to risk war with Whitebeard compared to any other pirate under the banner. They just couldn't believe that Roger, the king himself, had a son. It all makes sense now. This is going to be what the government wanted 20 years ago, and the Marines are going to make it happen, no matter what. The silence was broken when a voice rang across the massive and vast plaza filled with Marines. Fleet Admiral, several flags and sails spotted in the distance. Sengoku knew that this was coming. He is not too worried as this is not actually the Whitebeard pirates. These are the crews that sailed under the former for protection and privilege to plunder. There are so many big names and veterans from the New World. They all are here. With that in mind, the next question is where the strongest man in the world and his crew at? That was when the water encamped by the plaza of headquarters started to bubble. To the naked eye, this was nothing to freak out, but certain ears were able to pick up certain sounds down in the water. The next second, the water erupted and out came a large ship with the colors of a giant white whale emerge, followed by 3 more of its type. That's the Moby, Whitebeard's ship. They somehow got past our security and right into our front door, cried Marines across the plaza and inside headquarters. Of course, only someone like him could pull this off. Sengoku was not scared nor surprised, just annoyed that he didn't take in the chance that the world's strongest man will try something like this. He ignored how the Marines were in awe with so many pirates, including several big names that terrified them. The fleet admiral was only worried about the one. With every footstep, the waters and wood of his ship and even the foundation of the plaza shook in the wake of his immense strength, emitting in waves invisible to the naked eye. The sound of a heavy pull following every footstep made all of his enemies nervous. All of this from just ascending the staircase leading to the very front of the Moby, where the sun shone the world's strongest man in all of his glory. Whitebeard was an abnormally large man, at least 21 meters tall. He had a long face, plowed because of the advanced age, with many wrinkles around his eyes, and many scars running along his chest, and was very muscular. In spite of his title of Whitebeard, he had no hair on his chin and instead had an impressive white mustache in the shape of a downward crescent moon. He wore a black bandana around his head and adorned himself with a white captain's coat, which hung loosely from his broad shoulders and bore his Jolly Roger symbol. He was always seen bare-chested, and wore light, loose pants tucked inside his large black boots, and a dark pirate sash around his waist. In his hand was the weapon that was as infamous as the man who used it to destroy his enemies, from squads to entire fleets. A naginata. The weapon's size is massive, fitting that of its owner, with a striped pole ending in a spherical edge, and a curved, large blade attached to the pole via a golden part, decorated by what looks like a sea snake, with a thin part of it protruding on the blade itself. Finally, the man speaks to his enemies. "Hello, Sengoku. I trust you hadn't been too rough with my little brat, right?" Such a carefree tone with enemies left and right actually fit one of the most powerful pirates to ever live. I don't suppose you have it in your own old bones to just hand him over and Ace will be our problem instead, would you? Seeing the Marine standing either scared stiff or defiant to the end did not ruin his amusement. If anything, it just made him start to chuckle. "I didn't think so. Your choice, kiddies." With that said, the giant Naginata was thrusted into the very wood Whitebeard was standing on. He swung both of his arms outward before crossing them with closed fists. This bewildered the Marines until Sengoku cried out over the Den Den Mushi. "Watch yourselves. There is a reason Whitebeard is the strongest man in the world. He has the power to destroy the world." Said man then swung his arms again and slammed his fists into the air to both sides. What came next was something out of a nightmare. The air cracked, almost like taking a rock and making cracks in a plane of glass. Cracks appeared where Whitebeard struck to his sides. And that wasn't even the most shocking part. What came next were two gigantic tsunamis, rising and shadowing Marine headquarters in a matter of seconds. "Gura rah 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 rah," Whitebeard laughed all the way while his enemies cried out in terror. XXXXX around that time, you sailed with Gold Roger, the Pirate King. "Lord Buggy, you are the most incredible person we had ever seen." Almost instantly, the devotion and maddening respect for the literal clown of all pirates had doubled. The other escapees were either just befuddled about the fact or superior. "You really sure that this clown boy sailed under the king, Straw Boy?" Ivankov was in disbelief. He respected the king in his own way like everybody else and didn't give the Buggy the time of day until now. "Every herd has a black sheep, Ivankov," Luffy answered in a simple answer. "All you need to know is that the Marines are going to overestimate for a change, for all the times they underestimated true threats such as myself and my crew. After being a pirate with virtue, it didn't hurt to have at least one moment of overconfidence." Nami and Perona didn't care, they just stayed in proximity of their captain and lover. The crowd of Buggy admirers just bugged, pun intended, them with their loud voices and overenthusiasm. "What I want to know, Straw Boy, is this. Is Dragon going to join this war?" Ivankov asked. That got Luffy and his lover's attention. The former boss of Impel Down level 5.5 leaned in to whisper what he meant. "After all, I know Dragon and he won't want to let the Marines kill his other son." Luffy showed no shock, which made Ivankov actually worry about his savior until the former spoke with a voice that somehow carried through the loud crowd. "Dragon is my father, that much is true and nothing else. However, Ace is not my brother by blood but bond. And that is why the Marines are risking war to kill Ace." One by one, the escapees moved their heads towards Luffy. Ace's real father is Gold D. Roger, Buggy's old captain. It only took a split second before the ship itself jumped into the air with everyone else shouting. "What, boy?" Crocodile was feeling his patience slipping from being surrounded by the morons from level 2, but this broke the last straw on the camel's back. "If this is some kind of a joke, a prank, a goddamn punchline, then I need a good reason not to kill you for screwing with us," speaking from experience, was Crocodile. Too bad that he never got another word in when the ship suddenly lurched upwards a good foot before dropping only to rise even higher again. "What is this?" Escapes cried out as they fell on their butts, feeling the ship rise and fall over and over. Jinbei was not scared. He had a good idea what was happening. He had experienced something like before. He felt surest when the water underneath the ship lifted at hundreds of meters into the air, looking like a tsunami wave. "This," Luffy spoke with a casual tone, like he is used to something like this. "This is how we are going to get the real top row seat to the war going on. Once we see a way in, we will join the fight." The only thing scarier than the ship lifting with the ocean wave was how Luffy looked so relaxed while everyone else was either panicking or trying not to fall overboard. XXXXX back at Marineford, the Marines were starting to panic. One of those tsunamis is bad enough, but two, thankfully, they had a monster on their side that did not need to even be told to. Aokiji leapt from his seat among the other two Marine admirals and stopped right where the giant waves had peaked. He sent pure ice from both hands to strike the tsunamis and immediately froze them solid. Isu Agi, Ice Age. This surprised everybody, pirates included, but Whitebeard was not impressed. Show off brat. After all he has seen, it will take a lot more than that to make the world's strongest man to even twitch his eyebrow. Not even when Aokiji aimed his frosty hand at Whitebeard. Isu Baraku Peruchizan, Ice Block. Partisan, right out of his extended hand, ice formed in thin air into the shape of actual partisans, a type of polearm weapon. They flew at considerable speeds at Whitebeard, who only swung his arm again to crack the air in front of him. Apparently, this unnamed attack creates shockwaves that were invisible but powerful enough to shatter the ice weapons and even crack some of the ice covering Aokiji. This caused him to descend into the sea below, and yet he didn't drown. The admiral formed himself up and spread his ice over the entire sea. "Hey, the water is covered in ice. Our ships are stuck," one pirate shouted out. "But now we can jump down on the ice and take the fight to those lousy marines," another pirate shouted, which got everyone aboard the pirate ships to cheer. "Come on boys, let's show them what we can do," a commander among the hundreds of pirates called out, with everyone else cheered. Now it was time for some action. The marines did not expect to fight the pirates on a large chunk of ice, but they steadied their nerves, aimed their cannons, readied their firearms and charged forward to kill as many pirates as they could. Their orders are clear. Make sure the son of the pirate king dies today, for justice. From that moment, that both Sengoku and Whitebeard knew, was the start of the war of the best. Who will come out on top, nobody knew, just yet. In spite of our efforts, you were born into our world, Ace. But not without consequence that your mother had to suffer. In order to protect you from us, she had kept her baby in her womb for a total of 22 months. Sengoku announced that got Ace even more rattled, and the crowds were astonished. Can a mere woman do such a thing? Especially for a life that was still awaiting to begin. "You know very well, Portgas Ace. Your father is Gold Roger, king of the pirates." XXXXX. What I want to know, Straw Boy, is Dragon going to join this war? Ivankov asked. That got Luffy and his lover's attention. The former boss of Impel Down level 5.5 leaned in to whisper what he meant. "After all, I know Dragon and he won't want to let the Marines kill his other son. Ace's real father is Gold D. Roger, Buggy's old captain." It only took a split second before the ship itself jumped into the air, with everyone else shouting. "What, boy?" Crocodile was feeling his patience slipping from being surrounded by the morons from level 2, but this broke the last straw on the camel's back. "If this is some kind of a joke, a prank, a goddamn punchline, then I need a good reason not to kill you for screwing with us," speaking from experience, was Crocodile. Too bad that he never got another word in when the ship suddenly lurched upwards a good foot before dropping, only to rise even higher again. "What is this?" Escapes cried out as they fell on their butts, feeling the ship rise and fall over and over. Jinbei was not scared. He had a good idea what was happening. He had experienced something like before. He felt surest when the water underneath the ship lifted at hundreds of meters into the air, looking like a tsunami wave. "This," Luffy spoke with a casual tone, like he is used to something like this. "This is how we are going to get the real top row seat to the war going on. Once we see a way in, we will join the fight." The only thing scarier than the ship lifting with the ocean wave was how Luffy looked so relaxed while everyone else was either panicking or trying not to fall overboard. XXXXX. Isu Baraku Peruchizan, Ice Block, Partisan. Right out of his extended hand, ice formed in thin air into the shape of actual partisans, a type of polearm weapon. They flew at considerable speeds at Whitebeard, who only swung his arm again to crack the air in front of him. Apparently, this unnamed attack creates shockwaves that were invisible but powerful enough to shatter the ice weapons and even crack some of the ice covering Aokiji. This caused him to descend into the sea below, and yet he didn't drown. The admiral formed himself up and spread his ice over the entire sea. "Hey, the water is covered in ice. Our ships are stuck," one pirate shouted out. "But now we can jump down on the ice and take the fight to those lousy marines," another pirate shouted, which got everyone aboard the pirate ships to cheer. "Come on boys, let's show them what we can do," a commander among the hundreds of pirates called out, with everyone else cheered. Now it was time for some action. The Marines did not expect to fight the pirates on a large chunk of ice, but they steadied their nerves, aimed their cannons, readied their firearms and charged forward to kill as many pirates as they could. Their orders are clear. Make sure the son of the pirate king dies today, for justice. From that moment, that both Sengoku and Whitebeard knew, was the start of the war of the best. Who will come out on top, nobody knew, just yet. Chaos. That one word describes what is going down on the solid ice, with pirates and marines duking it out with each other. Swords and guns and fists. Even kicks were sent in all directions. The only ones that didn't join were the commanders still on board the Mobi and her sister ships, as well as the higher-ranking marines with the Shichibuki. The latter were here on the basis of a war brewing and won't be seen down there with the common people killing each other. That was until a certain man with the eyes of a hawk started to move. Hancock was nearby and wondered what he was doing. Don Quixote da Flamingo, with his signature sunglasses and flamingo feathers, also noticed. "The hawk, are you going to join in?" It was hard to tell with the strongest swordsman in the world as yet another pirate roaming the seas as he wished. "Merely to see where we stand in this that we have to call a war," the hawk answered, saying in layman terms that he is simply testing the waters before jumping into the pool. With a mighty swing of his intimating black sword Yuru, Mahawk sent a slash attack. One that only grew as it rocked across the ice, not even slowing down. It was as tall as the tip of the Mobi's masts and heading directly towards Shirahige, Whitebeard. And yet the strongest man in the world did not even flinch. Instead, the sounds of heavy footprints racing on the ice was heard before something intercepted the immense air slash. After a few seconds, it was sent high into the air before it dissipated harmlessly. "Look! Someone stopped the world's strongest slash." A voice was heard on the marine side before another was heard immediately. "Of course, you fool. That is, Diamond Jozu, commander of the 3rd Division of the Whitebeard Pirates." Once the sunlight shined through the smoke, it was plain to see that this massive man earned his nickname for a good reason. The diamonds covering Jozu almost covering his entire body, save for the left-hand side of his head and neck. Jozu is a big, very muscular, broad-chested, heavily armored and dark-skinned man. He has a long face with black stripe-like patterns for a beard and hairstyle. His legs are relatively thin in comparison to his muscular arms. He appears battle-hardened and has a perpetual scowl on his face. The dark armor he wears and his hairstyle are very similar to that of an Aztec warrior, with red bolted dark shoulder pads. On his chest he has a green cuirass, whose front and back portions are connected by metal straps that go over both his collarbones. Around his waist there is a big, elaborated golden belt, worn over what looks like a green skirt similar to the ones worn by Aztecs, with golden decorations near the edge. He also wears studded, black and gold large buckled boots and matching black studded pants. This spectacle did very little to stop the Whitebeard pirates in their tracks as they continued to take the countless Marines head-on. Up and above the chaos, a certain man in a yellow suit with a relaxed face got up from his chair. "Hey! I think that I have waited long enough. The boss can do with just one admiral on duty." Kizaru causally asked the remaining Marine sitting in his chair next to where Aokiji was also sitting. He didn't say a word or even budged from his spot and kept his face covered in his Marine cap. Not deterred by the lack of answer, Kizaru activated his powers and appeared over the battlefield in a giant display of blind light before turning back to his solid self, ready to attack. Yasukani no Magatama, Yasukani Sacred Jewel. From his hands forming a circle while arms crossed, Kizaru unleashed a barrage of yellow light particles. And yet Whitebeard still didn't bother to move. Once again, someone moved in front to take the blow for him. This time it was a man with wings of fire in place of his arms that flew in front of Whitebeard and took the hail of little laser bullets with a large circle of blue fire. Another voice was heard addressing this failed attack on Whitebeard. "I know who that is. It's Marco the Phoenix, commander of the 1st Division, first mate to Whitebeard himself." "Hey, don't try to top the king so soon in the game, okay Kizaru?" Marco himself was a relaxed individual even when half of his body was blue fire. At a closer look, the fire was healing from the bombardment of laser bullets, truly like the phoenixes of legend. It still hurts though. Liar. Kizaru was a man hard to deter and phase but was no simpleton. He knew that Marco was joking. The light man didn't even twitch an eyebrow as Marco turned into a complete HA bird's head and legs to complement the wings. Soaring towards the former, Marco appeared in the blink of an eye and landed a spinning kick towards Kizaru while turning his main body to human again, with the admiral blocking it with his forearm. "Man, this hurts." Liar. Marco saw that Kizaru was echoing him in a mocking way that manned the relaxed man to shout out loud. And yet that kick was nothing to sneeze at. It sent Kizaru flying back to the base, which created a considerable explosion. Still, Kizaru was an admiral. He appeared completely unharmed in front of his men. If anything, this was just a small annoyance to the light man. Not that anyone could see that on his face. "Giant squad." Kizaru shouted at the massive beings clad in marine cloaks and sporting weapons of their own. "Keep your eyes on the sky. Nothing gets past you to the execution platform." "Yes sir." They may be many times bigger than Kizaru and the other Marines, but the Marine giants can acknowledge that the former was superior in both rank and overwhelming power. However, they were, for the most part, vice admirals, so they can handle entire crews of pirates on their own. While their size made them easy targets to hit, their marine training helped them resistant anything from shotgun blasts to cannon fire. They are going to be a big, tough wall for even the Whitebeard pirates to take down to get ace. However, the commanders of the Whitebeard pirates were not to be underestimated. After stopping the world's strongest slash, Jozu made his own move forward. With his right arm from the fist to the elbow covered in diamonds, the large man punched the ice in front of him that somehow made a perfect circle cutout. What he did next was incredible, especially for a pirate serving under the strongest man in the world. Jozu inserted both hands into the circle cutout, lifted the ice block that was many times his own size and flung it behind him, right in direction of the Marines. It was larger than even all the Marine giants combined. The Marines started to panic again. Even if they ran, that block the size of a mountain will crush them. However, Whitebeard knew better and didn't even bat an eye at the sight, and neither did the senior Marines. The remaining admiral sitting on his chair finally moved his sights at the block, casting a shadow on Plaza reaching the face of headquarters. Stranding from his chair, the man readied his right arm before it turned into a mess of molten fire and rock that took the form of an arm and fist. Dai Funka, Great Eruption. This is the third and arguably most powerful and most ruthless of all the three monsters of the Marines. Marine Admiral, Akainu, Sakazuki. Sakazuki is an incredibly tall, light-skinned, unusually muscular man. He's about as tall as his fellow admirals, with a square-shaped face, very pronounced facial features, and short black hair. He wears a standard marine cap and sports a crimson, double-breasted suit, decorated with what appears to be a pink rose on his left buttonhole. Unlike many high-ranking Marines, he does not wear a tie, but instead leaves his light red-colored flower-patterned shirt unbuttoned, showing his muscular neck and part of a tattoo. He wears black gloves and black shoes. After showing off the arm made of magma, thanks to his Magu Magu no Mi, magma fruit, Akainu sent it right into the ice block. The magma dug immediately through the ice until the fist was seen on the opposite side. But Akainu did not stop there. The magma melted all the ice and burst apart into a hail of magma blasts shaped into fists. The pirates still on the frozen bay panicked, trying not to get hit by the boiling magma and or not try to fall into the puddles the hail was leaving in their wake. And still Whitebeard didn't budge from his spot, not even when the sister ships of his flagship were getting hit with the magma. There was one magma fist that was directly falling towards the Yonko, who just skewered it with his iconic naginata. "Nice trick, boy." Whitebeard spoke up, clearly amused if anything else by the display. Then he turned to literally blow out the flame of the magma still attached to the blade of his polearm. Now it was just a black rock of cooled magma, all from a man's breath. Why not stick to lighting candles on birthday cakes? It was a nice flex of power that even Akainu had to grin at. The old man hasn't lost his touch yet. XXXXX The war continues to rage on. With every marine fallen, a whole squad take their place with ranks from captains to vice admirals. The pirates are making progress while on enemy territory with the help of their own commanders, mowing down marines like weeds. However, the Whitebeard pirates aren't getting any closer to Ace and rescue him. It won't be long before Sengoku orders the blades to fall on their captive's neck. However, a whole new player enters the game. With each footstep, the sea shake and the clouds fade to reveal what could only be called a green giant with a straw hat that fits its size. It's Little Oars Jr. The Marines cry out as the named behemoth walked past all the cannon fire that did little to even tickle him. Little Oars Jr. is an abnormally large giant, complete with large forearms and hands, small lower body and barrel-like gut. His skin is yellow-green and he has orange hair reaching down to his legs, which are quite small in comparison to his large belly and hairy forearms. He has large fangs and horns pointing upward, black triangle-like marks just above his eyes, and some stubble on his chin. He also wears 3 skulls on a beaded necklace rather than a belt. "Oars!" Ace screamed out from his view on the execution platform. He was good friends with the green giant and even made that hat the latter is wearing. He thought it could help Little Oars with how close he is to the sun right now. He is terrified that yet another one of his friends is walking to his doom for his sake. "Ace, I have come to rescue you," Little Oars Jr. shouted as he continued his solo assault. Demonstrating that his size is not just for show, he literally lifted a whole marine battleship, ripping it from the ice and threw it at the Marines. He even sliced a few more ships with his blade like a hot knife through butter. Not even the giant squad could slow him down when Little Oars Jr. caught their weapons and sent them flying with his punches. This further terrified the Marines while giving the Whitebeard pirates some cover. "Oars will take care of the ships and giants. Men, let's mow down the rest and get to Ace," one pirate commander shouted as he aimed his firearm in place of his right arm and fired at the Marines facing him. That was when the pirate empress decided to join in. She kissed her finger and drew out a massive heart. Hancock tugged on the back and released it to unleash a barrage of red arrows to fire in multiple directions. Shiribu arrow, slave arrow. The hail of arrows met the pirates down below and whoever was hit by them had their arms, legs and even portions of their torsos turned to stone. But Hancock was just getting warmed up. Leaping down from her position up top with the other Shichibuki, Hancock performed a twirl that ended with a kick to one of the pirates. Not only did he felt the force behind that attack, but to his horror, that part of his body turned to stone as well. Perfume femur, aromatic leg. And she didn't stop with one. Hancock moved with graceful speeds to hit 2 targets at once. From 2 came 5 and then 8 all the way to at least 24 men on the ground with patches of stone on their bodies. The big problem was, hey, why is 2? Hancock didn't just attack pirates. She even went around Marines who were also present during her attack. "You're one of the Shichibuki, you're supposed to be on our side." One does not just shout that to a pirate like her and expect her to apologize for being a pirate. "I have agreed to answer the call and fight Whitebeard, but I never said I was on your side, you filthy vile pigs." Hancock got into character and no one down there had anything else to what the pirate empress was known for. "My beauty allows me to do whatever I want." Nobody could say anything to that, either because they were under her spell or simply too frustrated for words. Meanwhile, can anyone stop this monster? He is still destroying our ships. Not even the giants could stop Little Oars Jr. The Marines were as helpless as ants to this behemoth as he grows closer to Ace. "Shichibuki, we summoned all of you to help us win this war. Why aren't you fighting?" Either out of ignorance, anger or just the lack of insight, that foolish marine tried to get the government-protected pirates to fight the Whitebeard pirates. Mihawk did not try another swing at their captain and Hancock is attacking anybody in her line of sight still. That leaves only Doflamingo and Kuma who haven't moved from their spot yet. "Chill, will you? We will do our duty and fight this that you marine clowns call a war," Doflamingo answered with his usual devil-may-care attitude. "In fact, I think that your favorite dog is about to bite that oversized turd." The man with sunglasses and flamingo feathers casually pointed his finger towards the massive figure of Kuma. As big and intimating as a bear, Kuma said nothing as he stepped towards the incoming Little Oars Jr. The tyrant himself extended his arms after removing both gloves from his hands, revealing the powerful paw pads, and started pushing on something. With the sound akin to a foghorn, it didn't take long before witnesses could see that Kuma was pushing the very air itself. Only instead of sending it out as an attack, the bear-like pirate was compressing the air. By the time Little Oars Jr. stepped only a few feet from Kuma, did the latter let go of the tightly packed air bubble that moved forward in the shape of a paw pad. Yurususu Shaku, Urus's shock. Once this bubble landed right on Little Oars Jr.'s belly, it instantly expanded as a massive shockwave in all directions. So powerful that even this green giant screamed out in pain and fell to his knees. "Oars!" Ace cried out in helplessness at the sight of his largest friend in such pain. He started crying when the Marines coldly shot more cannon fire at their target, now feeling them when the cannonballs were no more than flies when Oars first appeared at the battlefield. Nevertheless, Oars proved that his size prompted an unfortunate arrogance. "If I have to die to save Ace, I can at least take one of you Shichibuki with me." The green giant among giants turned from his friend in chains to face his foes far below at his feet with a massive fist posed for a devastating punch. Once it landed on the solid ground of the plaza, the shockwave sent hundreds of Marines off their feet in terror. However, wahoo, that was too close. Doflamingo was a Shichibuki for his fashion as he was high in the air, much higher than Oars was, and gracefully landed right behind the massive aggressor. That was when the sound of a blade cutting through flesh in an instant was heard along with Doflamingo laughing like usual. Somehow, the man in flamingo feathers had completely cut off Oars' right leg at the knee. This is fun after all, ha 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 ha. Now fully understanding that the Shichibuki were not to trifled with, Oars tried to move his injured self towards Ace. With the insides still hurting like hell and one of his feet cut off, the green giant was moving at a snail's pace. The Marines continued to fire their cannonballs but like the first attempt, Oars didn't even notice them. Albeit because he was already in pain that he didn't feel the cannon fire. "HRRK, cold," Little Oars Jr. suddenly shouted and looked from Ace to see. Much to his horror, there was ice on both of his legs ending at his waist. It was clear as day that Aokiji has made his next move. The worst was that Oars couldn't budge from the spot to reach Ace and he couldn't even turn his massive body to even reach the admiral that froze him in his tracks, literally. Oars, the green giant, is completely helpless. "You sure had made a mess, monster." A certain lazy voice was heard which made both Oars and Ace shiver, something worse than the ice from Aokiji. "I don't appreciate that you made the giants I placed in charge of our prisoner look like chumps. Do you have any idea how much they eat compared to the rest of us?" What an odd thing to speak to a helpless giant in the middle of a battlefield, but is what most expect from Kizaru. Still, nice effort. That closed eye smile did nothing to calm his enemies. Ace could only wish he had the energy to scream for his largest friend when a bright light shined on top of Oars. A massive cry of pain was heard through the blinding light but everyone present knew who screamed. Ama no Murakumo, sword of the gathering clouds of heaven. Kizaru had made swords made of light before, but to suit his target, this sword was more of a massive spear that cut clean through Oars nonetheless. Oars. Ace finally found his voice, when it was too late to do any good. All he could do is watch his largest friend die in a soundless cry of fury and pain before his head hit the ground. Oars only made it as close as the plaza. XXXXX. As the battlefield comes to a silent halt, the Whitebeard pirates want to cry for their fellow pirate that was as much a brother to them as a son to their father and captain, but they had to stay vigilant as the battle is just getting started. As for Whitebeard himself, he held back any tears to stay strong for his remaining sons and to show how he respected the green giant for taking so much pain for Ace. The latter knew what he was doing to bitter end Oars. However, you shouldn't have dropped your guard, Whitebeard. For all their talk of justice and fairness, this marine giant was willing to go for a strike while Whitebeard was mourning Oars. Not only was it foolhardy, it was for naught when the veteran pirate lord merely raised his hand to match the massive axe heading his way. The air literally cracked between the giant-sized weapon and Whitebeard's fist. The marine giant struggled but his weapon lost to Whitebeard's own attack, shattering into pieces. And the world's strongest man wasn't done with this attacker. Before the giant could back away, Whitebeard grabbed him by the head and easily slammed him on the deck of his ship. With a flex of his power and a strange white bubble around the giant's head, the latter suffered terrible pain and damage when the bubble burst. All Whitebeard did next was toss the giant away like a used piece of cloth. Vice Admiral rose. A Marine cried out in shock at the very sight of a Vice Admiral defeated so easily. This just proves Edward Newgate earned his title as the world's strongest. Not even foes larger than him are a match for Whitebeard. With that display of undeniable power and skill, proving that Newgate hasn't slowed down just yet, Sengoku steeled himself and silently ordered the Marines to proceed with the plan. Even if the world was ending right now, they will kill the son of the Pirate King, for justice. On his side, he sees that Doflamingo is spreading chaos by making one of the Whitebeard commanders attack his own men. He also saw his longtime friend and loyal advisor Suru using her own powers to literally hang out pirates like freshly washed laundry. On Whitebeard's side, he saw his fearless children make an advancement onto the plaza thanks to the efforts of Little Oars Jr. He even saw one his ally pirates break through the blockades as were her specialty. The war was growing in both bodies and blood. It was still anybody's game. That was when a sparkle of light shone in the eyes of both titans that drew their attention to the sky for only a second before a separate set of screaming can be heard. Pirates and Marines temporarily stopped their fighting to witness something truly bizarre, even for the Grand Line. A whole Marine battleship was falling from the sky with tiny shadows of people falling in scattered positions around the ship. Ace, a familiar voice to a few down at the battlefield, recognized that voice. Now the war is a nobody ever saw coming. You sure had made a mess, monster. A certain lazy voice was heard which made both Oars and Ace shiver, something worse than the eyes from Aokiji. I don't appreciate that you made the giants I placed in charge of our prisoner look like chumps. Do you have any idea how much they eat compared to the rest of us? What an odd thing to speak to a helpless giant in the middle of a battlefield, but is what most expect from Kizaru. Still, nice effort. That closed-eye smile did nothing to calm his enemies. Ace could only wish he had the energy to scream for his largest friend when a bright light shined on top of Oars. A massive cry of pain was heard through the blinding light, but everyone present knew who screamed. Ama no Murakumo, sword of the gathering clouds of heaven. Kizaru had made swords made of light before, but to suit his target, this sword was more of a massive spear that cut clean through Oars nonetheless. Oars. Ace finally found his voice, when it was too late to do any good. All he could do is watch his largest friend die in a soundless cry of fury and pain before his head hit the ground. Oars only made it as close as the plaza. XXXXX. As the battlefield comes to a silent halt, the Whitebeard pirates want to cry for their fellow pirate that was as much a brother to them as a son to their father and captain, but they had to stay vigilant as the battle is just getting started. As for Whitebeard himself, he held back any tears to stay strong for his remaining sons and to show how he respected the Green Giant for taking so much pain for Ace. The latter knew what he was doing to bitter end Oars. However, you shouldn't have dropped your guard, Whitebeard. For all their talk of justice and fairness, this Marine giant was willing to go for a strike while Whitebeard was mourning Oars. Not only was it foolhardy, it was for naught when the veteran pirate lord merely raised his hand to match the massive axe heading his way. The air literally cracked between the giant-sized weapon and Whitebeard's fist. The Marine giant struggled, but his weapon lost to Whitebeard's own attack, shattering into pieces. And the world's strongest man wasn't done with this attacker. Before the giant could back away, Whitebeard grabbed him by the head and easily slammed him on the deck of his ship. With a flex of his power and a strange white bubble around the giant's head, the latter suffered terrible pain and damage when the bubble burst. All Whitebeard did next was toss the giant away like a used piece of cloth. Vice Admiral rose. A Marine cried out in shock at the very sight of a Vice Admiral defeated so easily. This just proves Edward Newgate earned his title as the world's strongest. Not even foes larger than him are a match for Whitebeard. That was when a sparkle of light shone in the eyes of both titans that drew their attention to the sky for only a second before a separate set of screaming can be heard. Pirates and Marines temporarily stopped their fighting to witness something truly bizarre, even for the Grand Line. A whole Marine battleship was falling from the sky with tiny shadows of people falling in scattered positions around the ship. Ace, a familiar voice to a few down at the battlefield, recognized that voice. Now the war is about to turn in a way nobody ever saw coming. As one gets used to the Grand Line, the world's greatest ocean, it takes a lot of effort to be so surprising that even veterans are caught off guard. The sight of an entire Marine warship falling from the sky with people scattered around the massive vessel while screaming that they are going to die was just one example. It wasn't until everyone processed that familiar voice that cried out for the Marine's prisoner. Garp, it's your accursed grandson again. Sengoku didn't bother use his Den Mushi, transponder snail, only the volume of his rising temper at this sight. The hero himself was gritting his teeth as this display. No words could describe his conflicting feelings. Down below, the Marines were either panicking or scowling while the Shichibuki, 7 warlords of the sea, were mostly amused. Luffy, you are so amazing. Hancock hid her growing awe at her crush. Never a dull moment with you. Huh, Luffy? Mihawk also kept a smirk tucked away. Kuma was silent and stoic like always. Foo foo foo. That Mugiwara, Straw Hat, boy is unbelievable. Doflamingo was always looking for something interesting to happen to brighten up his consent boredom. Meanwhile, just what is that? Was the collected thought of almost every pirate fighting the Marines on the ice. From islands where lightning falls like raindrops to storms that drop not hail but candy drops. Even they never saw an actual ship fall from the sky. After a few moments in free fall, those with telescopes and binoculars were finally able to make out who it was falling with one of their own ships. It is Mugiwara Luffy, the Liber Glade, and former member of the Shichibuki, and with him are the escapees from Impelled Down. With that proclaimed, everyone down below felt like panicking. I can even see people wearing strange clothes and, that's Imperio Ivankov. He was imprisoned for allying with the Revolutionary Army before vanishing from his cell. The Marines were getting more and more anxious with the scouts making more reports. However, as the sight of the ship and passengers were getting closer and closer, the Marines and pirates started to hear voices in the wind. At first it was just faint whispers until this got clear as day, falling into the ocean. XXXXX. A short while ago. Just what the hell happened? A voice cuts through the silence. I thought we were going to die and then we stopped. Shut up, vermin. Crocodile growled through his gritted teeth. This whole trip was not what he had hoped even remotely to be. It almost makes him want to return to his cell, almost. He did get used to moans and groans of those nameless prisoners at the very least. Those were soft to his ears. Better than these infernal buzzing weaklings. Once everyone saw the two massive tsunamis rose from the ocean waters, they almost thought their ship was going to capsize until it rose with the wave instead. Just when they thought the tsunamis will collide with Marine headquarters and crash their boat, their ship froze in place. Looking down, they saw that their ship wasn't just frozen in place, but the entire tsunami they were on was literally frozen in ice. The more experienced sailors knew exactly who was responsible for saving their lives from crashing, in a bit of irony considering said figure was a certain Marine admiral. In a way, they were saved by their enemy. While most were relived, Crocodile felt even more vexed than before, and he personally didn't think that was possible. Now what, Straw Boy? How are we ever going to get down? Ivankov asked the million-berry question. No doubt that there will be nothing but ice down there. That is true. I have very little use of my powers to soften our landing. Luffy sighed. He was actually used to have all the answers and now he is almost fresh out. That was until something tickled the back of his head and not in a physical sense. Looking down, he saw what could be their way to survive the fall. It's risky to AT but it was the best they got. As he was going to break it to everyone, the distinct sound of ice cracking got everyone on edge. Worst part, it was coming from below the bottom of their stolen ship. Luffy breathed in a good strong breath before facing everyone. All of you, aim for the ocean, it is our best hope. Most of the level 2 prisoners hastened to Luffy's side of the ship to see this blue spot, and the collected weight and movement had successfully caused the ice to shatter. The ship which was resting on the top of the frozen tsunami finally fell down to the battlefield below, along with the screaming escapees. XXXXX. Present, a massive splash, almost as tall as the Marineford headquarters building, erupted at the very spot where a large chunk of ice was literally dug up by Jozu moments earlier. Each ship and everyone on it landed right into the deep waters underneath all that ice. For most of the personnel that fell from the sky, it was salvation. For the others, they were Akuma no Mi, devil fruit users, and they had to make sure the water didn't so much as touch them. Akuma no Mi users really do have it bad. Jinbei emerged after helping Ivankov and Buggy out of the water. Luffy appeared next to him with his lovers still clinging onto him. Between the fall and the battlefield, their captain is the safest place to be. Being made of rubber did help a bit. They ignored how the clown pirate himself started to speak big about this as his big moment, to make history, preferring to make sure nobody drowned in their big entrance. From the distance, on the other side of the battlefield. Jinbei, is this your answer? Sengoku shouts from the platform. The smart man he is, he still wanted to hear it from the Shichibuki they had to imprison for refusing to answer the call and later protesting the war against Whitebeard. It is, I officially resigned from the Shichibuki. I am now a pirate again. Be ready, with complete confidence. Jinbei readied himself to face the Marines once more, a criminal in their eyes. Luffy let out a chuckle that got the large fishman's attention. What? Nothing. Luffy tried to wave it off. You're just everything bit that I heard about from an old face we ran into a while back. Jinbei had nothing to say to that, only steeling himself for the war ahead. As this was happening, the escapees were getting on the solid ice to ready themselves for the war they literally dropped in the center of. While most of them were cowering at the sight of nearly every single Marine in the whole world gathered in one place, one of them had his eyes on another man entirely. Where did Crocoboy go? Ivankov asked when the faint breeze that felt more like fine sand brushed against his nose. I guess that Sourpuss must have chickened out and left us all high and dry. Wait, there he is. Buggy looked before spotting the familiar sight of a man flying with a trail of sand where his legs are supposed to be. And heading for Whitebeard. Damn it, I was supposed to go first, bastard. That was ignored by everyone as the pirates hastened helplessly to protect their captain. Long time, no see. Old man. Crocodile's grin is almost as wide as his scar and he aimed his golden hook for the strike. You never learn, boy. Whitebeard still didn't budge, not even bothering with his latest attacker. He has been attacked many times even on his own ship, but every time, the attempts always fail. Crocodile noticed his target not budging as if to show that the former is not a threat to the latter. This killed the thrill of revenge long awaited and the former Shichibuki moved for the back of the neck. Instead, his hook hit a blade while the rest of Crocodile was slammed hard on the deck right behind Whitebeard. Crocodile growled at this thwart of his kill and with his face pressed into the wood of the Moby, he pondered who will dare stop him. He felt a hand hold his head down, a knee pressing against his right arm while a sandal held down his left arm with his hook scrapped against a thin blade. This clicked in his mind who it was. Mugiwara, I was foolish to think you will indulge my end of the bargain. It was foolish to even make a deal with scum like you, Crocodile. I said I will let you help us escape, not kill Shirihige-sama, Lord Whitebeard. Luffy responded in that tone that made Crocodile growl just a tad louder. Like it or not, the only way any of us are getting out of here alive is the one you just tried to kill. If you want to die here anyways, I am more than happy to oblige. Whitebeard let out a chuckle that got both of the pirates' attention. I would have killed to have even a handful of respectable brats like you. Mugiwara. Where did you go to learn such manners? All the while, Crocodile found himself kicked to the main mast of the ship. He breached with a pair of swords at his throat and rifles aimed at his head. Luffy merely straightened himself up to face the massive man with his captain's coat flapping in the wind. Shirihige-sama, manners are for garden parties. I am just some sad sap trying not lose his shit in front of the world's strongest man, the only pirate to rival Roger himself. Luffy said in a neutral tone while the twitching of his eyebrow showed his struggle to keep his emotions in check. After all, Moria was once my idol for matching Kaido at one time. Then he hid like the coward he was and let all his potential on a shelf to collect dust. You're different, you never stop for anything, Newgate. Whitebeard raised his own eyebrow. Just what is this kid jabbing about? Brats always let their mouths flap before they finally show their worth. What are you getting at, brat? Are you going to get in my way to get Ace or not? I am rescuing Ace. That simple response flew to almost every ear on the battlefield. Both pirates and marines couldn't believe that someone had the nerve to correct the Whitebeard. You may be here to do the same, but I am doing it myself. You can just show off for all you want. Just stay out of my way, got it? Those last two words echoed throughout the entire battlefield. Pirate, marine, they all were frozen in shock. Helpless to only watch this super rookie talk back to the world's strongest man. The air got heavy, filled with tension and fear. Everyone was afraid to even breathe. Whitebeard let a low growl, raised his signature weapon to the added terror of everyone witnessing and started to spin it. True to his title as the world's strongest, the wind moved with his naginata. Soon he stopped spinning and slammed the bottom end on the deck where he was standing. The shockwave from the point of impact blew throughout the battlefield, causing clothes and flags to flutter in the wind. Everyone, even the Whitebeard pirates, didn't know what was going to happen. Finally, after what felt like forever, Whitebeard showed a smirk on his face. You're the cheekiest snot-nosed brat I ever met. After decades of his children fussing over him or his enemies making him like a demon, it was kind of refreshing and even amusing for Whitebeard to meet someone willing to butt heads with him again. Just watch your back, kid, and don't die before you impress me, okay? Whatever. By this time, Luffy had steeled his nerves and focused his attention straight to where his brother was. On the other side of a battlefield completely covered in marines of all ranks. I am rescuing my brother, with or without you. At the same time with the impelled down escapees, he is competing. Ivankov started with his eyes wide and nose dripping. With Shirihige-sama, Buggy finished with his own eyes and red nose doing the same. Other prisoners were too frozen in fear to even whimper while a few of them fainted from fright. Our captain is just the most handsome when he does this, right Nami? Perona felt her heart floating along with her hollow ghosts mimicking her lovely-dovely expression. He better watch himself or else he may never leave our bed for a week, in spite of her huff and crossed arms. The navigator also felt her face flush at Luffy's bravado. But it will take a lot more than bravado to win less survive this war. XXXXX at the execution platform, Ace gritted his teeth and wished that he can scream for his friends and for his little brother that literally dropped in this war. Why did that crybaby grow up now, right in the middle of a war? Not to mention, where did Luffy get the guts to talk like that to his captain? His pops? Come to think of it, it looks like they were discussing something, right after his baby brother yelled in Whitebeard's face. What could it be? At the Moby, if I didn't know better, you really do read minds, boy. Edward Newgate had been a pirate for over 6 decades and have seen plenty of characters with powers that seem to be witchcraft even among Akuma no Mi. You are saying they're trying to move up the schedule for Aces Hirige? Those marines were ready for you but not me. Luffy answered. Consider this info as a thank you gift for taking in my older brother. Best of luck on your part, pops. The witnessing pirates still cannot believe the sight of Luffy being so causal with the Whitebeard and even using the name the latter's men use for him as a tease. "Come on, let's go," Nami called out the inmates while she and Perona followed their lover towards the Marines. Both had already adjusted to Luffy's tendency to run towards danger. Nami's voice did get the inmates to spring into action. They vowed to help their savior save his brother and hopefully secure their freedom. "Sorry to rain on your parade, boys," a familiar lazy voice made the army of inmates stop in their tracks, followed by a large bright sparkle of yellow light shunned upon them. "But the boss has enough problems. So, I am afraid what?" Kizaru, the man made of light, nearly had his own eyes blinded before feeling the pain of something shooting through his shoulder. Right before feeling a sandal shoving him forward into yet another squad of Marines. The Admiral was mentally kicked himself for lowering his guard in front of this super rookie. "I will have to thank Hancock for saving this bad boy," Luffy remarked, lowering his foot back on the ice, while holding up a pistol with a shellfish attached to where the barrel meets the handle. Perona had no idea what it was, but Nami remembered it. After fighting the man with a god complex in the sky, the rebels shared some of their gear including weapons in exchange not for gold but Usopp's rubber band collection of all things. Those people in the sky really loved rubber bands. That was Admiral Kizaru, and Mugiwara just kicked him away, like kicking a rock aside. An inmate found his voice and soon the rest of them cheered for the pirate captain that helped them escape impelled down. "Let's go boys, and for real." That got everyone's spirit charged, and so did their advancement into enemy territory. That got the Marines to take the cue to advance on the new batch of criminals to fight. Gum gum, Luffy reeled in his fist and a black hue shone on his entire right arm. The Marines readied their rifles and swords for the incoming attack. Kuro Suporingu Shato, Black Spring Shot. In a split second, 100 Marines were shot straight through their ranks with more scent flying from the proximity of the stretched black arm. Kaminari Taba, Lightning Flux, from the left. Nami electrocuted several dozen Marines, surging throughout entire squadrons with ease. Still, the navigator knows this gift from her lover has a lot more in store. She has a lot of time to practice once the war ends. Mini Horo, Mini Hollow, to the right. Marines were puzzled by what appeared to be several little cartoonish ghosts giggling as they fly among their ranks. Gosuto Ripu, Ghost Trap. The Marines screamed in terror and pain when every single little ghost exploded with the force of a grenade, knocking out more Navy soldiers by the dozen. With hundreds of their enemies already down for the count, the inmates cheered with excitement as they trampled over the defeated Marines and spread out to attack the rest. Fists were flying and weapons drawn to clash. This war has officially entered its next phase. It was still anybody's game. Luffy made sure that he had his eyes on the prize while also using Kenbunshoku Haki, observation haki, to keep tabs on the inmates behind him, especially Nami and Perona. They followed him into war and Luffy was going to make sure they follow me out of it. Luffy only stopped when he sensed an attack and two circular blades struck the ice right in front of him. Mugiwara. This time a whole body came in for the attack. Luffy struck back this time and sent his attacker flying forward. Only then he got a good look on who tried to attack him. "Don't tell me you forgot us. You were that stuck up from the Barati that complained about a fly in your soup." Luffy answered bluntly. "Wasn't impressed then and I'm still not. That guy with the weird glasses that tried to attack Syrup Village being a Marine, on the hand." Luffy smirked at the gritting teeth of his two attackers. "Forget it, you two puny fools." Both of them flinched to the sound of a woman behind them. Luffy still had the smirk on his face when he saw who was the unfortunate one in charge of the latter. "And Hina does not want to hear anything from the likes of you, Mugiwara." She was the Hina that tried to keep a certain cigar-chomping grouch from quitting back in Alabasta. Before Luffy could say anything, Hina suddenly sprouted a fence-like cage from both of her arms that immediately encompassed the former and his lovers along with a few escapees. A few Marines were also surrounded by the cage fence, Awase Bauri, lined kimono feather cage, closing her arms. Hina hoped to ensnarl her targets like fish in a net. Only, nice trick. Try aiming next time, Luffy called out, suddenly far behind Hina. The Marine captain looked back with shock before returning her sight to her net and sure enough, only the Marines were caught in it. Somehow, she completely missed her prey. Hina will be sore about this for weeks. XXXXX The war rages on, bodies fall left and right. Pirate, Marine, criminal escapees. The Marines were vast and organized while the pirates and criminals were more savage. Luffy and his army found the near countless numbers to be slowing them down and their prize was as far away as when they started. It was far too late for them to stop so they didn't. "Out of my way!" Luffy roared in frustration. Those pesky Marines were swarming him at all angles. And every Navy man he sent flying, two more took his place. As much as Luffy wanted to go all out, he had to make sure his allies were not caught in the free fire. Just when it looked like the super rookie was drowning in Marine bodies, several of them suddenly flew off in painful fashions. Not just around Luffy but also his lovers and the inmates watched the overwhelming numbers swept like flies in a strong wind. Was wondering when you will show. You are as reckless and eager for a fight as Ace, Jinbei remarked as he landed near Luffy and his allies. The more I look at you, the more convinced I am that you really do share blood. Luffy could only shrug it off. Not a lot of time for small talk in the middle of a war. Enough playing around. A booming voice got their attention as the ice shook and an actual giant in simple trousers and a marine coat worn around the collar appeared with an iron club fitting his size. I will turn all these measly, puny pirates into paste. True to his word, the giant marine struck the ice with his weapon. Hold still, now if only he can actually hit the tiny intruders at his feet. Attention men, in the middle of the conflict between rookie pirate and marine giant, the sound of Sengoku suddenly tore through the entire battlefield. This development changes nothing. We will still face the Whitebeard pirates and Shirihige himself to execute the son of the Pirate King. If anything, the arrival of Mugiwara is proof that the rookie is also the spawn of true evil. Everyone waited with bated breath for Sengoku to continue. Our intel included reports of Roger's son living on an island in the East Blue alongside another boy. They trained and played with each other and eventually proclaimed themselves to be brothers. All the while, the giant tried to hit Luffy with his club until the rookie pirate jumped to where eyes met. Almost like the latter was finally to make a movie right when. Monkey D. Luffy, the Liber Glade, is the biological son of the revolutionary dragon. Just like that, another bombshell dropped that shook the entire world. This war's stakes can't be any higher. Not when two pirates, sons of most hated men, are now fighting the navy. XXXXX in Sabaody, people dropped their notebooks and their jaws at the latest reveal. For the longest time, they pondered if this super rookie that breached Eni's lobby was possibly Relarine's. That it was too bad that a legendary marine has a child that turned out to be a pirate. But this blew their expectations out of the water. On the battlefield, Marines were terrified all over again. Most were too scared to even move their legs while the remaining senior and more experienced Navy men expressed their disbelief. Smoker remembered what happened all the way back in Logatown but kept it to himself. Just watched his fellow Marines grow even more scared or motivated to stop Luffy. The escapees were also scared in their own way. Buggy let the snot out of his rubber nose, hoping that Dragon doesn't find out the clown tried to cross his kid. Ivankov was not bothered, only concerned how this will affect the revolutionaries that he did plan on returning to after the war. Jinbei had his breath took away. Mihawk felt his little grin grow. Doflamingo laughed in excitement all over again. Kuma stayed silent as always and Hancock grew her blush even deeper. She won't mind if Luffy was the son of the devil himself. While all of the world stayed silent, Luffy never gave it any bother. He still was in midair, looking eye to eye with the giant that tried to crush him. He didn't care that nearly everyone knows his father now. I made friends with giants before but I always figured I will have to come to blows with one. Luffy remarked, truly with a devil-may-care attitude. He played with the toxin man named Magellan in the latter's own prison. A giant in marine colors is hardly any scarier than that. He then jumped so high up, the marine giant had to look up to his target for a change. Now you hold still. Everyone stopped to see Luffy's right arm blacken and compressed to not just twice as big but up to 4 times as big. It was so big that it blocked the sun from the giant's eyes that soon grew with terror. Even when the giant raised his equally large club to try and take the incoming blow, he knew that it was foolhardy venture. For this, Gum Gum Koirujo no Suporingu Shato, Gum Gum coiled spring shot. The compressed punch fired faster and louder than any cannon, broke right through the giant's weapon and landed a crushing blow on the massive marine. The Navy men were terrified at such a sight by a rookie pirate while the escapees cheered at the top of the lungs for the pirate that freed them. Ace, say what you want, I am going to be the one to save you, Luffy screamed to the heavens, daring anyone or anything to tell him otherwise. Ace gritted his teeth at that declaration and that his brother was the same troublemaker that was now mowing Marines like weeds. And he, the other brother, failed to defeat a fat man with poor hygiene and a stolen power. Upon landing on the frozen bay in an epic pose, Luffy pointed forward past the fallen giant. Let's save Ace, everyone! With a thunderous cheer, the escapees charged forward towards the waiting army of Marines. Stop those pirates! Sengoku screamed out for every uniform and white jacket to march out to do their duty. This war has reached its latest peak. XXXXX. Basu Bazooka, Black Bazooka, Haru Winku, Hell Wink. Gozen Maigawara Saiken, 5,000 Tile True Punch. 3 powerful techniques made short work of hundreds of Marines still standing in the way of their captive and the advancing pirates. All the while, lightning strikes were scattered throughout the whole frozen battlefield. Screams of pain and terror mingled with sounds of gunfire and clashing blades. Even explosions rang out and some of them had Marines scream of ghosts chasing them. Mugiwara. A familiar voice cut through the madness and with a large cloud of smoke out of nowhere, the sound of weapons clashing got everyone's attention. Through the thick cloud, They saw a certain large jeet struggle against a katana. I should have known that you would try something like this, first Eni's lobby, then impel down and now this. That first one was a given, Smoker. Luffy calmly spoke, almost like this was just having coffee with an old friend to the pirate captain. But it is clear that your boss didn't tell you who quit the ranks. Now I am just a pirate that can do whatever he wants, whenever he wants. Not that you are any different. What? Nobody could tell what was making that literal Smoker angrier. The fact he, the Marine, was struggling against a pirate, or that the said pirate had the nerve to pair the former with the latter. You wear the coat and the colors of the Navy. You even parade around that you follow the rules to the letter. Luffy started. But abandoning your post, leaving Logia Town to the mercy of future pirate attacks to stalk me? Getting yourself caged with your prey by another pirate in Alabasta? Who even ordered you to butt into a pirate brawl in Mocktown? I am sure that it wasn't Sengoku. Shut up, Smoker, in a true fit of rage, broke the standoff and attacked Luffy in a blind rampage of strikes and thrusts of his jeet. Luffy still kept him on the ropes with his precise blocking and deflecting strikes from Reime Itami. Don Pain. Damn you. Mugiwara. Smoker screamed in utter frustration until his latest thrust was dodged by Luffy this time. But before he could realize what his target was doing. Sideobasarishu, sideburn slash. Luffy took the advantage of Smoker's confusion and in a rather ironic twist, used a move that was previously used on Blackbeard. A pirate that Smoker actually fought against, by Luffy's side. That and the fact Smoker forgot was that Luffy was a user of Busashoku Haki, armament haki. The Marine's smoky body was useless against Luffy's attack to his right abdomen. Luffy let out a breath he was holding when he had to strike down one of the few Marines he actually liked. More and more, he hated this stupid war. All he wanted was his brother. Was that too much to ask? Mugiwara. The pirate captain turned his head to see Smoker struggle to stand with his jeet holding him up. That slash was the same one that took out a veteran Grand Line pirate even if he was fat and filthy. The pain must be unbearable. I swear, I will do nothing of any sort. A woman's voice was heard right before Smoker was kicked off in the distance, taking out dozens of Marines. Luffy watched the cigar addict fly with a scowl still on his face. Are you alright, Luffy? Boa Hancock viewed this as rescuing her beloved, but with that look on the latter's face, she wasn't sure. While I appreciate you risking your title and your own people for my sake, Luffy said to the pirate empress with a sharp tone. I rather like that guy you kicked. He better not die in this farce of a war. Next time, rescue me when it's me on the ropes. Okay. Hancock nodded. Luffy can be goofy but can be serious when he wants to be. At least her beloved is no pushover. Great, now head it over before those bastards in coats get any ideas. Luffy had his hand out, silently demanding what Hancock had for him. In a quick motion, she passed her hand into Luffy's, right before the latter's hand grasped it in an iron grip. Hancock was taken by the strong yet gentle action, and before she could say a word, Luffy kissed it. Quite the odd sight for a pirate to do what is expected of a gentleman to show thanks to a woman. Whatever words she had, Hancock swallowed when she saw Luffy's face soften with concern and gratitude. When Luffy grabbed what she was handing him, Hancock wasn't bothered. If anything, she was more fired up since ever. During that whole encounter, Nami and Perona smirked. Their captain was definitely raised well on how to treat women, and given how he gets them all light up, it was kind of cute to watch Hancock act like a little girl getting her first kiss. If it wasn't for the war, they could have asked her for a little girl's night out. Too bad that she is already mowing down the Whitebeard pirates as well as Marines, not back to her cold man-hating persona. In the meanwhile, come on, I know you are supposed to work for the world government, but we are still comrades. Ivankov was up against an obstacle that is more Anno. Kuma was staring down the Queen of Okamas himself, don't ask, and had once again fired his lasers at the latter. Would you actually say something for yourself? It's pointless, you know. Ivankov gritted his teeth and looked to his right to see another annoyance on side of the government. Don Quixote da Flamingo. You know the rumors, that this guy obeys the clowns in tights like a dog because he is truly a robot. The world government had caused his brain to be rid of any sense of his old tyrannical ways. He is completely brain-dead with a robot body. Ever the gleeful one for chaos. Doflamingo really enjoyed this scene and talking smack about a fellow member of the Shichibuki. Oh, shut up. Listen, Kuma. I don't care what your deal is. Ivankov spoke before noticing that the massive man was not looking at him this time. Following his gaze, Ivankov realized that a few of his fellow escapees from floor 5.5 were in Kuma's sight. Oh no you don't. The Queen of Okamas jumped to Kuma and let out a surprisingly strong kick that actually sent Kuma sliding backwards. Doflamingo could tell that this was getting serious and was content on this dispute between comrades. With another gleeful grin, he jumped high into the air towards the rest of the carnage. There is more of the war to enjoy anyways. It's bad enough that you get turned into a robot behind our backs, and targeted my precious candies. Ivankov charged in towards Kuma, who managed to anchor his large feet with the ice and centered his gaze on the former. But nobody forgets this face. Ganman Supakutaramu, face spectrum. All of a sudden, Ivankov's face multiplied from 1 to 2 and soon enough into dozens of copies everywhere. This was confusing even Kuma's robotic eyesight. Garakushi Winku. Galaxy Wink. All of these faces shouted out the technique before a wink from each of them hit Kuma at the same time. Needless to say, not even the tyrant-turned-robot is getting up from that. I no longer care that you are a robot or not, you had that coming. While all this was happening, Luffy continued to lead the charge, unhindered by the Marines from all sides. Captain. He smiled upon hearing a familiar voice. Any call for reinforcements has been shut down. Nami appeared in streaks of lightning whose dads left several dozen Marines on the ice either fried or twitching something awful. And I made good use of that neat trick you suggested. If a war wasn't raging around, Luffy would have silenced his lover with a soul-draining kiss, so he settled for a quick but sweet peck. Don't forget me. I made those idiots in the control rooms too negative to even speak right. Perona appeared with a few of her hollows following her while easily phasing through Marines that fell to the ice, spouting random negative comments under their breath. Don't I get a? Perona was answered with a light peck that made her swallow her words. You both are doing great for this idiot that dragged everyone here to the Navy home turf. Luffy replied. Once we get my brother, the night is all yours. The escapees can all agree that only the son of Dragon will be flirting with his girlfriends in the middle of the war, right in front of them. Hello Luffy. Those 2 words made everyone, yes everyone, to halt. Right in front of them was one of the worst people to run into during this war. The strongest swordsman in the world. Dracule, Hawkeye, Mihawk. I was hoping more for a drink of red wine before we clashed blades again. How's your male first mate? This flew over most heads present but Luffy was not amused. You will find out soon. Make sure to thank the bear with a Bible when you get bored of this war. Luffy answered cryptically. No one wanted to ask and risk getting Hawkeye in a sour mood. Very few people were alive to see the man himself with any expression aside from his usual scowl. In the meanwhile, for old time's sake, Luffy continued, taking out both of his blades, Reime Atami and the rapier Uedoku Toge, Toxic Thorn. With his weapons out, Luffy positioned his katana straight forward while his rapier drawn back, both blades aimed at Mihawk. Let's dance. All the while, Mihawk drew his own signature blade, Yuru, large and blackened from countless clashes. Fine. When you are ready. With that said, Luffy took a mighty leap into the air. In no time, he was blocking the sun from Mihawk's eyes that were thankfully shielded by his trademark hat. That was not what got his attention though, it was what was emitting from his opponent's katana. An ooze-like shroud, covering the entire blade. Under his hat, Mihawk felt his smirk grow even sharper. Have it your way, Luffy. While everyone's eyes were at the scene of the Super Rookie's move against Mihawk happen in slow motion, their wide eyes only grew when they saw what is happening to the giant sword. That shroud on Luffy's blade that was a reddish black, Mihawk's blade had a more purple shade of black. Time eventually started to move again and both blades went for the strike, except, they did not meet. They instead shook the world the likes haven't seen since the age of gold Roger himself. XXXXX up on the execution platform, 3 souls were turning white for different yet relevant reasons. Garp. Sengoku got his mouth working right after his brain and turned to the oldest pain in his back who still hasn't recovered. I know that you didn't teach your insolent, accursed grandson to do that. The gritting of his teeth could be mistaken for a steel grinder, especially against the likes of Hawkeye. Luffy, what have you truly become? Garp always had a booming voice that either intimidated his enemies or irritated his fellow Marines. When he spoke no louder than a mouse, Sengoku couldn't bring himself to speak any more demands. All he could do is resume watching this play out with Garp more on the same page than the latter had in the decades stuck to each other. Ace had nothing to say, he couldn't even make a peep. Ever since that fateful day when he found out that his little brother unlocked a second Akuma no Mi power, when both he and those wild animals passed out from a sudden drunken stupor, Ace knew that Luffy will not stay below him for long. He can still remember all those angry rants from when Luffy confessed to have left a decoy with them while he trained with Shanks. He was just too angry to be scared of what Luffy could have done if that pirate didn't help him control his new powers. But this is too much for words. On the other side of the battlefield, Whitebeard was still not moving, but it was clear that even the world's strongest man is also at a loss for words. While his sons and his enemies were watching the 2 swordsmen clash without meeting blades, Whitebeard focused on what was at the point where the weapons would have touched and not for that glowing orb. Very few besides him lived after seeing such a sight. In his mind, Whitebeard remembered back when he was better known as one of Roger's strongest rivals. To the Pirate King, you were either an ant for him and his crew to stump or a rival he always jumped at the chance to battle. Whitebeard himself was that bad too, loving the thrill and excitement of meeting someone that can match blades with him and get that blood pumping again. After Roger was executed and the new world was under the careful eyes of the Yonko, including himself, Whitebeard never thought he will see that amazing sight again. One where two individuals' raw power will emerge and show the world how pirate lords did their fights back in the day. That kid will go far. Maybe remind this world how we used to do it. Only time can tell. Whitebeard thought to himself. That spectacle sent shockwaves all the way to his spot on his flagship, and instead of feeling threatened or even annoyed, it was kind of liberating. In his old age and sitting in his throne without getting any action since Roger was executed, Whitebeard's senses have dulled just a tad. But now they are working as good as well. He was much younger. Nice of you to join us, Squire. SWA's barely halfway up the stairs when his father called out. The fact Whitebeard felt him coming made Squire hesitate before proceeding, something that the former actually picked up on. Losing your nerve? You can still sit out, if you are tired of all the racket. No, I am not leaving you to do this alone, Pops. Squire stilled himself as he stepped to Whitebeard's side. The strongest man in the world, the one that matched Roger more than any other pirate, did not know what was wrong with one of his sons. He simply kept his eyesight on the spectacle that brought him so much nostalgia. Right before a sudden immense gust of wind exploded in all directions and almost blew the Moby out of the ice. How Whitebeard's cloak didn't fly off, not even he knew. Back to the duel on the ice-covered bay, that explosion from his matchup with Luffy had created a thin layer of fog that almost covered the entire bay. At where his boots were dug into the ice was an array of trenches from when Mihawk tried to anchor himself against the explosion and when he used Yuru to spread the impact. The only thing left to note is that Mihawk's vision showed nothing but fog and ice everywhere. However, before becoming a Shichibuki, Mihawk was an accomplished hunter and was not going to stop today. The fog soon cleared, revealing bodies of both pirates and marines either on the ice or standing in defensive positions. Mihawk saw several of them already have resumed fighting. Typical. Even in a sea storm, they will fight to the end. The strongest swordsman in the world hid his disgust for such nosy, violent creatures who only had fighting on the brain. All he cared was finding his prey. His famous eyes have never failed him before. The crowds of marines and pirate grew in numbers fighting the death. Probably thought that Mihawk had won like always. And even the younger among both sides knew better than to try him for themselves. They rather faced their superiors than Mihawk. None of this mattered to Hawkeye. Scoping the fields of fighting in madness until his eyes spotted the silhouette of a young man with a straw hat looking over what could be his lovers. There you are. Mihawk did not win his numerous battles and destroyed the foolish upstarts by being careless. Even a whisper could lead to your demise in his line of work. He simply used Yuru to make a devastating slash, traveling along a path through the battlefield and hit its mark. From his position, Mihawk saw a blast where he sent the flying slash towards. What his eyes didn't see were any body parts or even blood in the air. Don't feel too bad, Hawkeye. Right in front of Mihawk came the long thin blade of a rapier, coated in a black shroud like before that made the rapier look a bit like a comet. Mihawk moved Yuru in his left hand to block the attack before it stopped right in front of his throat. Before the strongest swordsman in the world felt like a cannonball hit him in the stomach, sending him flying back once again. Never one to show weakness, Mihawk managed to hide his pain and swallow the blood that filled his mouth. That was when he heard a strap snapping and a small object hitting the ice. Looking down, Mihawk saw that it was his necklace with a cross that was actually his smallest blade, the same one he used to test and taunt Zoro all the way back at the Barati in the East Blue. Luffy. Pirate, remember Hawkeye? Luffy used his signature grin while still holding Uedoku Toge forward in his right hand before relaxing it while his other hand took out Reime Atami. Now that we put on an unforgettable show for everyone, let's finish this up. Chokaku Senko. Hone Garito, right angle flash. Bone grid, in a split second, both blades crossed and slashed at the ice under their feet to cut several large perfect squares. One of them was even under Mihawk's boots. The man with the eyes of a hawk himself saw that Luffy used his rapier's superior speed and balance to make straight slashes while his katana somehow strengthened them with its own natural powerful strikes. The boy has gone a long way since those distant training days. Zoro couldn't have picked a better man to be his captain. My turn. Mihawk spoke before raising Yuru for a downward attack. Luffy gritted his teeth when he too raised his blade to block large black blade. The force also left dozens of large cracks on the ice below Luffy's sandals. That was when Mihawk felt himself being lifted slightly and turned to see that the ice on his side had been sliced into massive ice cubes. The force behind his own attack had caused the ice cubes including his own to lift up at least 1 foot. Too bad that Mihawk was distracted by the change of the battlefield to notice his opponent return his rapier to its sheath. It was when those ever-sharp eyes saw a familiar hand grasp the edge of the ice cube. This duel to the death is not in my rights. That belongs to someone else. Luffy said firmly, like he didn't just block an attack that probably decimated an entire fleet of pirates from the East Blue months ago. You have your fun, over there. Using his undeniable strength, Luffy sent the ice cube with Mihawk on it flying towards another section of the battlefield before the latter could even try to stop him. Most of the marines and pirates stopped their fighting to escape the large ice cube heading their way. The latter were even more panicked when Mihawk landed gracefully after the ice cube crashed into the frozen battlefield. Have fun? Only you, Luffy. Mihawk ignored the screams of the pirates and cries from the Marines, demanding to know who sent the strongest swordsman in the world flying like that. Before he can even make one step, Mihawk raised Yuru once more, this time to block an attack. Hello Hawkeye, I hope you don't mind me cutting in. The attacker's voice proved it wasn't Luffy this time. It was another pirate entirely. He was a tall, muscular, broad-chested, tanned man with a curly, black mustache, a dark blue top hat, and an earring in each ear. He wears a semi-open dark blue shirt with a white diamond stripe pattern near the top that reveals some of his hairy chest, as well as a cape that is shirt, and white gloves. He also wears light blue pants with a belt that holds 2 sword sheaths, one on each side. He wields 2 sabers, one in each hand. Vista of the Flower Blades. This should be interesting after all. Mihawk stated without any annoyance or animosity, simply stating a fact. Luffy was a wild card that continued to surprise him, but Mihawk has had enough surprises for one day. Ah, I am honored that you know me. Vista responded with his grin not budging, not even twitching. Of course. Only simple-minded fools will not know you. With those words of acknowledgement said, the duel between swordsmen proceeded. Thankfully, without any grand display of power this time. Just clean strikes and parries. All the while Mihawk was matching his Yuru with Vista, he can't help but drift in thought. Luffy. I always knew that you were worth that red headful's left arm, but this proves one thing. You have the gift. The gift to rally powerful people by your side, without ever trying. It is the scariest power of them all. XXXXX back with Luffy, Straw Boy, Ivankov emerged after another twirl of kicks and flying marines. Is there anything you can't do? Later. Luffy answered. The plaza is in sights, and soon, Ace will be. In spite of all the chaos, his allies and fellow escapees heard Luffy clearly. The plaza was where the bulk of the Navy was stationed before swarming onto the ice-covered bay. It means that whoever in the uniform hadn't shown yet are awaiting the prison escapees breaching their front yard. But then, look, a voice tore through the chaos on the frozen bay. Fighters, marine and pirate, turned to see what could it be. It was yet another scene from a nightmare, adding to the horrors of this war. An entire army of large men with glowing eyes that shunned through the smoke surrounding them. However, the real surprise was, those things look exactly like Barthold possible. Many pirates and escapees started to scream in terror while the Marines were also shocked, with a few smirking that the infantry has come for them instead of the pirates. Even Whitebeard was surprised to see such a sight. He had heard rumors, but the real thing was something else. One Kuma is bad enough, now there are hundreds of them. Ivankov was still miffed, of sorts, with the original Kuma. Just what is going on? They tried it on us and the other super rookies at Sabaody. Supposed to be the latest in pirate catching units. Luffy answered, not showing any fear. He was worried for his lovers, the escapees, and even for the Whitebeard pirates. Never before has anything like this showed up even in the Grand Line. Luffy scowled when he saw another familiar face from the archipelago. Men, orders are in from the fleet admiral. Focus only on the New World pirates. Sentomaru, with his signature axe and a face that resembled a woman, bellowed out orders to the pacifista army behind him. Immediately, the Kuma look-alikes started firing their lasers from either their mouths or their palms at the pirates. Panic aroused throughout. Pirates by the dozen were being eliminated left and right. They tried fighting back, but their weapons were ineffective against several massive metal men who continued to shoot lasers in any direction. The Whitebeard pirates were still on the frozen field, not sure how to counter this attack from the back. Their captain hasn't issued any further orders, which troubled the pirates even further. That was when, no, Luffy screamed something awful with a face that looked like the abyss itself stared him. Immediately, he drew out his pistol with the seashell attached and aimed it in the direction of the battlefield on the bay. The escapees almost cried for their leader to not shoot them, only to notice that it was aiming not at them but slightly above them. Nevertheless, they shielded their eyes from the bright light that emerged from the mouth of the pistol. What followed was the sound of a bullet hitting metal, the sound of a blade meeting flesh, and the screaming about a blinding light. Everyone turned to see where those haunting sounds were coming from, and what they saw shook them to their core. On the front deck of the Moby, where Whitebeard was still standing stoically, was another pirate reeling on the deck with his hands on his eyes. Only, there was a massive, bloody gash right on Whitebeard's right abdomen.